Chapter 268. Why are you so silly? Hearing this, Chu Qingyan couldn't hold it in and her eyes turned red. The silly person wasn't her. He clearly knew that this mission was too difficult, and it was a trap, but he accepted it without any complaints. He clearly knew that he needed people by his side, but he sent most of his people to protect her. He clearly knew that he was poisoned and couldn't leave, but he kept pushing them away. Big Ice Cube, you're the most silly person here. You've never thought about yourself and never knew how to take care of yourself. Chu Qingyan looked up, afraid that she would accidentally cry again. Big Ice Cube, don't say any more. If you keep talking, I'm afraid I won't be able to stop myself from beating you. Don't be fierce to me because you're no longer His Royal Highness, but rather a piece of meat on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. So, if you want us to abandon you, you have to think twice. Chu Qingyan fiercely said. It was like she had turned into an executioner, sharpening her blade and preparing to make a move. Xiao Su couldn't help curling his lips, but it turned into a soft sigh in the end. Chu Qingyan could clearly see the tiredness on his face. She knew that after talking to her for so long, he must be exhausted. She immediately said, Big Ice Cube, relax and sleep. We'll be outside. Ethereal will think of a way to cure your poison. Sleep. Xiao Su wanted to say something, but his eyelids were so heavy that he couldn't open them. In the end, he could only let himself fall into the endless darkness. Chu Qingyan gently patted his shoulder, just like how he had coaxed her to sleep in the past. What goes around comes around, it's my turn this year. But now she didn't want to face this big ice cube who was so weak that anyone could hurt him. She draped her dried coat over his body. She tightly hugged him, not daring to let go. She was afraid that if she let go, he would abandon her again. The fire in the cave would occasionally make a paw-paw sound. She slept very restlessly, waking up from time to see if he was feeling well. Hualing and the others quietly came in a few times, but when they saw the two of them leaning against each other, their eyes became slightly hot and they went out again. Ethereal, have you thought of a way? Hualing was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan at the entrance of the cave. Ethereal started, but she lowered her head in defeat. Fire Spirit, don't force Ethereal anymore. If he had a way, he would have said it a long time ago. The Wood Spirit couldn't help but speak up. Hualing ran his fingers through his hair, feeling a bit impatient. Aren't I in a rush? You don't have to care about me. I'm so useless. I can't think of anything at such a crucial moment. After racking his brains for a few hours, Ethereal suddenly gave up on himself. Hualing heard this and glared at him. How long has it been? Bring me some spirit. Don't give me that half-dead look. But I'm afraid I really don't have a way. Ethereal leaned against the stone wall, feeling very depressed. But when his voice fell, Hualing immediately went forward and grabbed his collar. His voice was filled with resentment. Ethereal, in the past, you relied on your own strength to save the lives of thousands of people in the army. In vain, Master trusted you so much. So how can you say such depressing words at a time like this? Are you worthy of Xiao cavalry? Are you worthy of us? Are you worthy of Master lying inside? Hualing angrily sent out a fist that landed on Ethereal's face. His cheekbone instantly swelled up and Ethereal fell to the ground. When the Wood Spirit saw this, she immediately went forward to block Hualing's second fist. She forcefully separated the two and looked at them with an unreasonable expression. What are you doing? Master is in a critical situation with poison, but you're good. One is punching his companions, and the other is giving up on himself. If you still don't wake up, go get soaked in the rain and wash away the anger and dejection on your bodies. Hualing turned his wrist and gave a cold snort before turning around. Ethereal wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and stood up shakily. Wood Spirit, Hualing wants to wake me up. You don't need to mind it. Hualing put down his hand when he heard this. He raised his head and closed his eyes, remaining silent. If the two of them don't vent, they won't be happy. You don't need to mind them. Turin, who came back through the rain, did not care about the actions of the two and walked straight into the cave. Turin, Master and the little princess are resting. What do you want to do? Wood Spirit asked in confusion. Turin stopped and did not turn around. When I was at the foot of the mountain, I saw people preparing to search the mountain. I'm going to inform the little princess. After saying this, Turin entered the cave. Hualing, Ethereal, and the others all looked at his back in surprise. Turin did not put the little princess in his eyes before, so why would he report to her now? Could it be that he already acknowledged the existence of the little princess? But now was not the time to think about this. The most important thing was to deal with the enemy searching the mountain, so the three of them immediately followed. Searching the mountain? Chu Qingyan's face paled. Although the cloaked man had already left, the others did not know about the big ice cube's injury, and were still persistently trying to assassinate him. But now that they had lost most of their troops, the remaining troops were either injured or unconscious. Moreover, the main general was poisoned. It could be said that they were currently very weak. Once they attacked, they would only be at the mercy of others. Adding frost to snow, this was their current situation. Chu Qingyan calmed down. Since Turin came in to ask her, that meant he wanted to hear her opinion. There was no point in panicking now, so it was better to use this time to think of a solution. How many people do they have? How far are they from us? There are 20 people on the east side and 25 on the south side. They are all at the foot of the mountain, and have not reached the middle of the mountain yet. Hualing was impressed by her calmness and her concise questioning. He immediately reported, "We are outnumbered. We can't fight head-on. We can only outsmart them." When Hualing and the others who rushed over heard this, they immediately stood to the side, wanting to hear what method she had. Chu Qingyan carefully thought about it. Thinking back to when they were chasing the scenery along the way, she slowly formed a plan in her heart. She immediately said, "Do you have pen and paper?" Hualing and the others standing on the side shook their heads. In order to avoid being chased, how could they care about those things? Even if they had them, they would have been soaked. Without pen and paper, it would be a bit hard to do. Chu Qingyan knit her brows, but she did not panic. When her eyes fell onto the fire, her eyes slightly lit up. She reached out to take a wooden stick, and then pushed aside the straw in front of her. When the stick touched the ground, she looked up and said to Mu Ling, "We need to set up a trap, so we need hidden weapons. Right now, we can only use materials. There are a few simple and easy-to-use hidden weapons that we need Mu Ling to complete." When Chu Qingyan said this, a trace of pleasant surprise flashed in Mu Ling's eyes. Studying hidden weapons was one of his interests, and he knew that the little princess always had many strange ideas in her head. Chapter 269. After Chu Qingyan finished speaking, she began to draw with her head down. This kind of hidden weapon is called the bamboo raft kill. It's made of chopped bamboo that looks like a bamboo raft. One end is sharpened and tied to a tree with a rope, using the lush vegetation as cover. If it reaches a certain scale, it can be used to create a bamboo array. After drawing one, Chu Qingyan did not stop and continued to draw. This kind of hidden weapon is called the Thousand Catty Buckle. As long as a person steps in and activates the mechanism, the wooden ring will automatically close, and the sharp end will pierce their body. In this wild forest, the grass is lush. If we hide the Thousand Catty Buckle in the grass, it will be easy for the enemy to fall for it. Chu Qingyan drew two kinds of hidden weapons. They were very simple and easy to use. Now that the situation was urgent, they couldn't use them all if she drew too many. So she chose two hidden weapons that were most suitable for the environment. When she lifted her head, she saw that everyone was looking at her as if they had seen a ghost. Chu Qingyan sweated slightly. Did they think that she had been possessed by a spirit from the mountains? "Little princess, this subordinate never thought that you would know this much?" The fire spirit was surprised. Knowing this much meant that she could use the current terrain, the enemy's mentality, and their current strength to set up so many traps. If it wasn't someone who was well versed in military tactics, it would be very hard to come up with this kind of plan in a short period of time. Although it wasn't precise, it was still very good. There are many things that you don't know. Stop wasting words and go prepare. Time is life. Although Chu Qingyan was a bit happy that they recognized her, the most important thing right now was to defend against the enemy. Everything else was not important. Mu Ling looked at the hidden weapons on the ground, and his heart was filled with excitement. Although the bamboo raft kill was a relatively common hidden weapon, The little princess had made some improvements. She had added weight to the end of the bamboo. If the hidden weapon was activated, the weight would move from the end of the bamboo to the tip. This was equal to increasing the killing power by several times. As for the 1,000 caddy buckle, he had never thought that it could be used to design such a small mechanism in the wood. If it wasn't for the fact that the situation didn't allow it, he would have worshipped the little princess. Turin glanced at her, and a trace of relief flashed through his eyes. She really didn't let him down. Seeing everyone rubbing their palms, Chu Qingyan revealed her white teeth and smiled slyly. The moon was dark and the wind was strong. It was the night of an eye for an eye. Turin left with his secret guards to make preparations, while Mu Ling led some people to quickly make hidden weapons. She wanted to be able to throw all the hidden weapons down when those people were halfway up the mountain. Hu Ling, this is the most inexpensive hidden weapon I've ever made. However, its lethality is no less than those sharp weapons that cost thousands of gold coins to make. Mu Ling said emotionally as she directed people to make the hidden weapon. Hu Ling was pulled to dig wood and was flustered. He couldn't help glaring at him. Hurry up. Once we escape from here, I will support you taking the little princess as your master. The wood spirit smiled and immediately focused on the task at hand. Everyone left except for Ethereal. Chu Qingyan smiled at him, and then continued to caress the person in her embrace. She heard that when people were injured or seriously ill, they wouldn't be able to sleep well. She didn't know if Big Ice Cube would sleep better if she did this. Ethereal looked at Chu Qingyan, who was completely focused on taking care of his master. He suddenly felt that he had misunderstood her too much in the past. Little Princess Consort. Unlike his usual perfunctory attitude, he sincerely called out, "What is it?" Chu Qingyan looked up at him in confusion. Then her eyes lit up. "Did you think of a way to save His Highness?" Ethereal shook his head as an apologetic look appeared on his face. Chu Qingyan knew that she was too impatient, so she quickly said, "Ethereal, don't be too anxious. Sometimes the more you force yourself, the worse it will be. I shouldn't be this anxious. I'm really sorry." Ethereal smiled. "Little Princess Consort, you don't have to comfort me. I understand." Seeing that he didn't take it to heart, Chu Qingyan finally relaxed and continued the topic from before. "What did you want to say to me just now?" "Little Princess Consort, do you know when Master was first injured? It wasn't a small injury, but a life-threatening injury." Ethereal spoke. Chu Qingyan didn't know why he suddenly brought this up, but she still shook her head honestly. "I don't know." 5 years old. Ethereal softly spat out these 2 words. He wasn't surprised to see the person in front of him suddenly widen her eyes. Ethereal continued. "That day it was Master's birthday. The palace maids brought him to the imperial garden to pick flowers, but for some reason, Master walked into a cold palace by himself. A crazy consort stabbed Master's chest with a broken piece of porcelain." "What? How could she do such a thing to a 5-year-old child?" Chu Qingyan couldn't help but angrily say. At that time, Big Ice was only a 5-year-old child. How could he resist the power of an adult? Moreover, it was a crazy person who had lost her mind. Big Ice must have been scared to death at that time. Chu Qingyan's heart ached, as if that piece of porcelain had stabbed into her heart after 15 years. Ethereal smiled coldly. Later, that consort was found to have mistakenly ingested hallucinogenic drugs, and was finally executed. Such a coincidence. Big Ice got lost and went to the cold palace, and that consort in the cold palace just happened to ingest the drug. Could it all be so coincidental? Chu Qingyan had already guessed that behind this scene, there must be someone instigating it. After saying this, Ethereal continued. The last few times he was seriously injured, it was on the battlefield. Fortunately, Master has a good foundation. If it was someone else, I'm afraid they would have died long ago. Chu Qingyan nodded and felt a bit lucky. She was lucky that he was still strong enough to survive after experiencing so many hardships, allowing her to meet him in her lifetime. For Big Ice, although the military camp was the most bitter place, it was also the place where he was the most relaxed and free. In the past, she was very curious as to why Big Ice knew how to educate children. He was clearly a person who lived in the military camp, so how could he know about these things? Moreover, he was a golden bachelor. It wasn't until Hualing had a slip of the tongue that she learned that in order for her to treat the King of England's manor as her own home, Big Ice had gathered many people and tried to steal some experience from his subordinates, as well as some answer sheets. These things made her laugh for a long time, but after laughing she fell silent. A person who didn't have the word take care in his dictionary, but for her, he learned from others stroke by stroke and then poured it on her bit by bit. It was like he was nurturing his own little seedling, using all his emotions to make the little seedling grow faster. How could she not be moved by this? It was also from then on that she started to slowly place this seemingly invulnerable and brave man into her heart. Chapter 270. Snake's Kiss Poison. Although it hasn't activated yet, the poison in the body will be like thousands of ants gnawing at the meridians, making people wish they were dead. After all these years, Master has experienced many big and small battles and has been injured countless times, but this subordinate has never heard him cry out in pain, even now. Ethereal's words were filled with a faint admiration, as well as annoyance from not being able to develop an antidote. Chu Qingyan couldn't help lowering her head to look at the calm person in her arms. Other than his shallow breathing and his slightly wrinkled brows, she couldn't feel his existence at all. At this time he should be fighting against his illness, but he didn't show it, as if he had already been cured. Just how much pain did he suffer to have such a strong resistance to this poison? She remembered back in the inn, when she found out that he had suffered internal injuries, but he acted as if nothing had happened. She curiously asked him if it didn't hurt. But his answer was that when you have suffered more pain than this, you will feel that this injury is insignificant. So the big ice cube was already used to it. He had been like this for all these years. Perhaps the biggest pain the big ice cube had suffered was when he was 5 years old. Or perhaps, the pain wasn't the wound, but rather the heart that was full of holes. Chu Qingyan pulled her thoughts out of her memories and looked up at Ethereal, as a bit of hope appeared in her eyes. Ethereal, no matter what, I'll leave it to you. She was not a doctor, so all she could do was stay by the big ice cube's side and protect him. Ethereal nodded heavily. He was currently focused on researching the secret poison he had learned in the past. Master's life was more important than him, so he wouldn't allow anything to happen to his master. The footsteps outside had lessened by a lot. Chu Qingyan knew that everyone had gone to ambush the assassins, hoping that they could get rid of those people in one fell swoop, so they wouldn't have to worry about anything else. The sky gradually brightened, and the rain slowly stopped. It was like the world had been reopened, as the darkness faded and light reappeared. Nothing special happened that night. If it had to be described, it would be a night of pitiful screams. Chu Qingyan knew that Hualing and the others had succeeded. The bonfire had already burned out. She leaned against the mountain wall, and did not sleep for the entire night. She stared at the big ice block, afraid that she would miss something if she was not careful. Ethereal had said that although the Tianshan snow lotus could suppress the poison, it was not 100% certain that it could do so. If there was even the slightest mistake, the poison could backfire. Therefore, she did not dare to sleep at all. Or rather, she could not sleep at all. The ground was covered with a layer of straw. Xiao Su was lying on top of it, covered with a thick coat. It was unknown if it was because the Tianshan snow lotus and the snake kiss poison were fighting for territory in his body, but his lips were purple-black and snow-white. However, his exposed skin was becoming more and more crystal clear. One could see the crisscrossing meridians inside. His white and rosy skin was becoming more and more attractive. If his clothes were half covered at this time, it would definitely be a beautiful scene. It was a pity that Chu Qingyan's mind was not on this at all. She kept wiping his sweat with a cloth. Since last night, he had been breaking out in a cold sweat. Ethereal had said that the Tianshan snow lotus and the snake kiss poison were fighting a tug of war, which was normal. Chu Qingyan finally relaxed. When the morning light came out of the ground, the sound of happy footsteps could be heard. Chu Qingyan turned to look at the cave entrance. She knew that Hualing and the others had returned. Hearing these footsteps, it meant that they were in a good mood. Little Princess Consort, your method was very effective. You don't know how many people were taken care of when the bamboo raft fell down? Hualing's face was filled with happiness, not seeming like he had not slept at all. Mu Ling also came forward and said with a smile, "And after those people were hit by the 1,000 catty buckle, they thought it was some kind of ghost from the mountain, and were scared half to death. Turin is very smart. He made us learn to howl like wolves, and those people were so scared that they didn't even dare to come up. Then we took advantage of the chaos in their hearts to assassinate them. We took back the humiliation they gave us, bit by bit, a tooth for a tooth, a blood for blood." Hua Ling was filled with joy and even spoke about Mu Ling, who normally hated praises. Chu Qingyan was infected with their joy and a faint smile hung on her face. So success could also make people go wild with joy. Mu Ling looked at the lively crowd and felt a bit of joy in his heart. They had won a battle and their morale had been raised again. Then the road ahead would be a bit easier. Mu Ling turned his gaze to the little princess consort. Last night, there were 3 groups of people searching the mountain. Most of them were killed on the mountainside. Right now, the danger should be resolved. Hearing Mu Ling's report, Chu Qingyan withdrew her smile and nodded. Among these assassins, the most threatening ones were the Bamboo Hat Men, the Moon Palace sect, and the Cloaked Man. The Bamboo Hat Men had been forced back by Big Ice Block at the beginning and suffered heavy casualties. They probably wouldn't make a comeback so quickly. Protector Ju of the Moon Palace sect fought with Big Ice Block and was heavily injured. He probably wouldn't attack again, and might have already given up. And the Cloaked Man's arrow pierced through Big Ice Block's chest. With the addition of the poison, the Cloaked Man believed that Big Ice Block would die without a doubt. Then it was even more impossible for him to launch a sneak attack, unless he felt the need to add another stab. However, that possibility wasn't very high. So it could be said that the most threatening factor around them could be temporarily removed. And last night's battle, they successfully forced back most of their enemies. Then they could breathe a sigh of relief. You've all worked hard. Rest well, and conserve your energy. Who knows, there might be a tough battle ahead. Right now, because Big Ice Block was heavily injured, he couldn't keep moving. Moreover, they hadn't found a way to cure the poison yet. So it was better for everyone not to act blindly without thinking. Everyone nodded. After feeling elated, they also vented out the haze in their hearts. After a day and night of frequent battles, everyone was already showing signs of fatigue. Hua Ling was about to leave when he realized that ever since they came in, Ethereal had his back facing them. Even after they won the battle, he didn't show any expression. Hua Ling instantly felt that something was wrong. He walked over and patted his shoulder. "Don't think about it anymore. If you keep thinking, your brain will explode. Rest first. If you collapse, no one will be able to cure the poison in Master's body." The moment Hua Ling finished speaking, Ethereal stood up with a whoosh and said to Hua Ling in surprise, "Someone can cure it." Who? Everyone immediately surrounded him. Chu Qingyan was also filled with anticipation. Hua Ling turned to look at Chu Qingyan with an excited face. "My master, Divine Dr. Luo." Everyone was delighted, but then it dimmed down. Turin shook his head and said, "Divine Dr. Luo doesn't have a fixed residence. Water Spirit also can't find any traces of him. Moreover, we have already lost contact with the outside world." Hua Ling shook his head. "Although my master isn't here right now, he once went into seclusion for 3 years to research the detoxification methods of the world's top 10 poisons. Although he only researched 3 methods and I don't know which ones, before my master traveled the world, he entrusted the sect to my junior sister. He had the intention of letting her inherit his mantle, so." Chapter 271. So you think that since your master passed down his medical skills to your junior sister might know how to detoxify 3 of the top 10 poisons. Chu Qingyan immediately followed up. "Right. Although I don't know which 3 poisons my master found, this is also a kind of hope." Ethereal nodded and said, "Everyone's hearts filled with joy. Right, perhaps the snake's kiss poison is one of them. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go." Chu Qingyan stood up and immediately gave the order. Although they only had a 30% chance of winning, it was still better than sitting here and waiting for death. Chu Qingyan lowered her head to look at the person lying quietly on the ground, looking incomparably peaceful. He was already exhausted to a certain extent, otherwise he wouldn't have reacted to their large movements. So time was tight. As for how many enemies were there at the foot of the mountain, they couldn't care that much anymore because the situation didn't allow them to drag it out any longer. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, she would never give up. Everyone began to move. Their footsteps were hurried, but they were more forceful than before. That was their hope. They firmly believed that their master would be fine. I'll lead people to open a path. You guys follow closely behind, Turan said to Huiling and Muling. Don't worry, I will definitely protect Master and the little princess. Huiling patted his chest. After everyone looked at each other, they immediately split up. After the fresh rain, the weather turned to autumn. The mountain was beautiful in the sun, and the birds flew together. After the heavy rain between the mountains, it was like they had been washed, clean and bright. The sun also jumped out of the horizon, but because it was deep winter and the temperature in the mountains was low, Chu Qingyan was shivering from the cold wind when she came out of the cave. Her heart was filled with anxiety, so she wasn't in the mood to enjoy the beautiful scenery in the mountains. She moved Xiao Su into the carriage with everyone. Jean Xian drove the carriage while Huiling and the others protected them. The group quickly headed down the mountain. They were ambushed several times along the way, but they were all taken care of by Huiling and the others. They didn't want to fight, so they left as soon as they broke through without stopping at all. This was because one day had already passed out of the 3 days, but Yangsha County was at least 2 days away. If they didn't rush day and night before they arrived, their master's poison would have acted up. The fierce cavalry had never been this aggrieved before. They had to hide and run. But this was what their master taught them. So no matter what, they had to safely send their master to Yangsha County. They would take it back in the future. In order to rush, the carriage moved very quickly. The carriage was very bumpy, but in order to prevent Xiao Su's injuries from worsening, Chu Qingyan placed a thick blanket under him. She also protected him in her embrace, using the softness of a person's body to reduce the vibrations. Chu Qingyan would occasionally use the water bottle to wet Xiao Su's lips, moistening his throat. The unconscious Xiao Su couldn't be fed anything. In order to help him recover his strength, Chu Qingyan made porridge for him while he was resting. As long as there was time, she would feed him the porridge to prevent him from being defeated by hunger before the poison was cured. She had just put down the water bottle and used her sleeve to wipe the leftover soup from his mouth. Looking up, she saw Ethereal's lifeless eyes looking out the window, as if he was in a daze. Chu Qingyan felt slightly surprised. In her impression, Ethereal had always done as he pleased. Unless he encountered the matter of the big ice cube, he would always have an indifferent attitude that didn't matter to him. Other than the 2 times in the courtyard, and when they left the thatched cottage clinic, his expression had been slightly off. She had rarely seen him like this. Even though all her thoughts were on the matter of the big ice cube's detoxification, but seeing his worried frown, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but ask, "Ethereal, are you all right? Did you run into some kind of problem?" Ethereal came back to his senses. He gave a slight smile, but it was slightly bitter. "Little Wang Fei, this subordinate is worried that if we go to the clinic, they won't treat us." "Why?" Chu Qingyan suddenly remembered that when Ethereal had appeared in front of the clinic, one of the doctors had told him not to go near the clinic. She was shocked. Ethereal shook his head. "Some things can't be explained clearly. I have a dispute with Shimmy. This subordinate is worried that she won't be willing to treat us because of that dispute." "That Shimmy of yours?" Chu Qingyan heard a hint from Ethereal's tone. When it came to matters between men and women, it had to be love. And she has a strong personality, knows right from wrong, and does not go back on her words. In the past, she said that she would cut off all ties with this subordinate. Now, I'm afraid that she won't see this subordinate again. There was a trace of disappointment in his voice. When he had left the sect, she had let him choose one of the two. But the situation had been dangerous at the time, and he had no right to choose. He would not forget that day when she had decisively turned and left. Chu Qingyan was suddenly curious about this rumored Shimmy. She hoped that she could get to know this woman who could make this unrestrained and indifferent young master unable to do anything. But the premise was that she could help them treat the big ice cube. What if she doesn't want to see you, and doesn't want to treat His Highness? Then what should we do? This question was very important. Ethereal pursed his lips and suddenly thought of an idea. When the time comes, you can take His Highness to the clinic. This subordinate will not show himself. Also, you can't reveal your identity. Remember, you can't mention anything about the Sichuan imperial family. Why do we have to hide our identity? She could understand why he didn't show himself. He was afraid that Shimmy would be angry at the big ice cube because of him. But why couldn't he mention the Sichuan imperial family? Young Princess Consort, just do as this subordinate says. This is the only way to let His Highness enter the clinic. My Shimmy doesn't have a bad heart. As long as you don't step on her bottom line, everything will be easy to talk to. Ethereal lowered his eyebrows, as if unwilling to discuss this matter. Chu Qingyan thought that perhaps he had his own difficulties, so she didn't pursue the matter. She nodded and agreed. Later, tell everyone to be careful. Although they had reached a consensus, Chu Qingyan didn't know why she was worried about the next step of the journey. She had a premonition that the journey wouldn't be smooth. She couldn't help but clench her hands. Only when she was close to the big ice cube could the uneasiness in her heart be beaten away. Xiao was still in a deep sleep, and as time passed, the atmosphere gradually became tense. Fortunately, they still managed to reach Yangxia County within 2 days after hurrying all the way. Everyone didn't stop walking. After entering the city, they immediately headed for the mountainside. At this time, the sky was still dark. The earth seemed to still be sleeping. But the clip-clop of the horses' hooves was already echoing in the mountains. Chu Qingyan lifted the curtain of the carriage. Under the weak moonlight, she could faintly see the thatched hut halfway up the mountain. They had finally arrived. Chu Qingyan's heart was filled with excitement. She turned around and hugged the person in the carriage. She pressed her face against his neck and almost choked with sobs. Big Ice Cube, wait a little longer. We will soon send you to detoxify the poison. But the night hadn't passed yet. Would dawn be waiting for them? Chapter 272. When the carriage arrived at the thatched clinic, Hualing got off the horse first. He quickly stepped forward and knocked on the door. Is anyone home? We have someone here who's injured. It's very serious. After the door was knocked, anxious footsteps could be heard from inside. Hualing took a step back and the door was opened from the inside. A young doctor came out from the crack in the door. He looked left and right before asking, "Why are you knocking on the door in the middle of the night?" "Little friend, we have someone here who's injured. Can we enter the clinic for treatment?" Chu Qingyan also got off the carriage at this time. She smiled at the young doctor and asked politely. Hearing that someone was injured, the young doctor immediately opened the door. "Come in first. I'll call senior sister." Chu Qingyan nodded. Turin and the others had already carried Xiao out of the carriage and hurriedly entered the clinic. At this time, Cheng Yanluo had just finished sorting the herbs at hand. She stretched her back and felt sore all over. Just as she was about to go back to sleep, she suddenly heard a flurry of footsteps. Senior sister, someone is seriously injured. He's outside seeking treatment." The young doctor ran over and woke up countless people. Xiao, who had just fallen asleep, also got up when he heard this. "Where is he?" Cheng Yanluo opened the door and asked. "I've already asked someone to carry him in." The young doctor panted. "Okay, I'll go over now." Cheng Yanluo turned around and closed the door. Cheng Yanluo had just taken a few steps when she saw Xiao walking over while putting on his coat. "Third junior brother, you go to sleep first. I'll take care of things here. I heard that there's been some unrest in the nearby towns. I'm a little worried that someone is seeking treatment so late at night. I'd better go with you. If it's serious, I can lend a hand." Xiao replied with a smile. Cheng Yanluo couldn't help but raise her eyebrows and smile. "Third junior brother, are you worried about me or those people seeking treatment?" It's both." But Xiao didn't dare to say it out loud. Ever since the last time eldest senior brother came to visit and disappeared, senior sister came back and found out about it. She gave a clear order that if eldest senior brother came to visit again, she would use a broom to chase him out. Although senior sister didn't say anything after that, there was something wrong with senior sister since then. Her temper was getting worse and worse. Those who came to seek treatment were scared by her cold face and didn't dare to come again. Even the little disciples of her own sect avoided her. She only recovered a little in the past 2 days. But he was still worried. As if she had seen through Xiaofeng's thoughts, Qing Yanluo merely glanced at him. Did he really think of her as a flood beast? Let's go and take a look. They came to the clinic with eldest senior brother to seek medical treatment. I think they seem to have a close relationship with eldest senior brother. Do you want to ask them about his whereabouts? It's over. Why did this person mention such a sensitive topic? Huoling and the others immediately straightened up and got ready for battle. If this person refused to treat their master, they would be violating the rule of not harming the common people and would have to treat their master. Cheng Yanluo, who was about to step forward to check on Xiao Su's injury, suddenly stopped when she heard this. She immediately narrowed her bright eyes and turned to look at Chu Qingyan. Her voice was not as bright as before. Do you know Morongju? Morongju? What the hell was that? She had never heard of him and didn't know him. Chu Qingyan shook her head honestly. Cheng Yanluo suddenly raised an index finger and shook it. There was a trace of imperceptible resentment in her voice. Morongju is his real name. The name he is using now should be ethereal. Chu Qingyan blinked and then replied seriously. I know ethereal. I just met him this year. My father has a strange illness, but he couldn't tell, so he recommended us to come to you. Unfortunately, you weren't here at that time. After he brought us here, he disappeared. We still can't find him. Oh. Cheng Yanluo dragged out her tone, which made Chu Qingyan tremble with fear. She was afraid that she would ask them to leave as soon as she spoke. It turns out that he also has an illness that can't be cured. What a waste of the title of the first eldest senior brother in the sect. Now that he's out of the sect, everything is wasted. What an undeserved reputation. Cheng Yanluo sneered. His medical skills are not as good as yours. Maybe he's too ashamed to go back to the sect. Chu Qingyan agreed cautiously and then asked, Sister Yanluo, can you take a look at my cousin's injury? Cheng Yanluo looked up and down at Huoling and the others standing in the hall. She sneered. Why do I have the illusion that if I don't take a look at your cousin's injury, they will set fire to our clothes? I, Cheng Yanluo, can eat anything but threats. Chapter 273. Once Cheng Yanluo finished speaking, Huoling and the others stiffened and couldn't help but turn to look at their young princess consort. Chu Qingyan raised her hand and had Huoling and the others retreat to the side. Then she faced Cheng Yanluo and said with a smile, My family's guards don't know etiquette. Big sister Yanluo, please don't take offense. My cousin's injuries are serious and can't be delayed. Can big sister help? Cheng Yanluo looked deeply at the little fellow with rosy lips and white teeth. She narrowed her eyes. Little sister, big sister likes to hear you speak. All right, I won't make things difficult for you. Saying this, Cheng Yanluo waved to Xiaofeng. Prepare hot water, herbs and a clean ward. Yes. Xiaofeng still didn't quite believe these people, but the injured were more important. This wasn't the time to argue. He immediately ordered his disciples to prepare. Chu Qingyan was slightly delighted. It was fortunate that Cheng Yanluo believed her and agreed to treat Big Ice Cube. She secretly wiped the sweat on her forehead. She wasn't good at lying, but now she could only force herself to do it. It was really torturous just now. Cheng Yanluo saw her pink face and sparkling lips and teeth, and wanted to tease her. Are you feeling hot? Oh no. I just don't feel well. It's fine. You don't have to worry about unimportant things. Chu Qingyan immediately shook her head. She wanted to tease her a little more. It was rare to meet such a fun little girl, but she had her priorities. Cheng Yanluo didn't pay much attention to her, and walked to the bed in the middle of the hall. She reached out to check Xiao Su's injuries and casually said, There's an arrow wound on his chest. But he's lucky. If it was a millimeter more, he would have died. She casually untied the gauze and saw that the wound had been treated. She felt that the method was familiar, but after she finished bandaging it, she looked up. His lips are purplish and black. There are signs of poisoning. Third junior brother, Silver Needle. Cheng Yanluo reached out, and Xiaofeng immediately handed over a silver needle. Cheng Yanluo tested the poison, and was slightly surprised when she identified the type of poison. It's snake's kiss poison. She then turned around and sneered. What kind of enemy did you offend to be so ruthless? Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up when she heard the name of the poison. Is there a way to detoxify it? I heard that it's one of the top 10 poisons in the world. Currently, there is no solution. Cheng Yanluo glanced at her regretfully. Just as she was about to straighten up, she suddenly noticed a jade pendant hanging from her belt. She took a closer look at it, and her expression changed. At that moment, Chu Qingyan did not notice the change in Cheng Yanluo's expression. When she heard that there was no solution, she froze on the spot. It was as if a corner of her world had collapsed. Once the sun rose, the 3-day deadline that Ethereal had mentioned would be over. This clinic was their biggest and last hope. No, it can't be. Ethereal said that in this world, other than his master, if even his junior sister can't do anything, then this poison is really incurable. But at this time, where can they find divine Dr. Luo? Sister Yanluo, please think of another way. My cousin doesn't have much time left. Chu Qingyan went forward and tugged at her sleeve, pleading earnestly. But just as her hand touched Cheng Yanluo's sleeve, she saw the latter slowly turn around to face her. Her expression was different from the indifferent one just now. Instead, it was solemn, or rather, she was suppressing her anger. Sister Yanluo, what's wrong? Chu Qingyan couldn't help but ask. You're from the capital? Cheng Yanluo suppressed her anger. Chu Qingyan didn't know why she suddenly asked this question. But it was obvious that she knew something. Chu Qingyan hesitated for a moment before nodding. Yes. He's the King of England of Sichuan? Cheng Yanluo's questioning tone was firm. Chu Qingyan was slightly shocked. She remembered that Ethereal had once told her that once she admitted to having anything to do with the imperial family, his junior sister wouldn't save Big Ice even if she had to watch him die. How should she answer? She already knew, but if she admitted it again, she was afraid that what awaited her would be the cold shoulder. Cheng Yanluo saw the conflicted expression on Chu Qingyan's face. She suddenly sneered, then slowly pulled her sleeve out of Chu Qingyan's hand. She turned to point at Xiao Su, who was lying quietly on the bed, and said self-deprecatingly, "Don't blame me for seeing the mask on his face just now. Don't blame me for not remembering it. Don't blame him for bandaging the wound on his chest in such a unique way. If it weren't for the jade pendant on his body that exposed his identity, I'm afraid I would still be kept in the dark by that bastard Morongju. He's been deceiving me all these years. After so many years, he still hasn't improved. He only knows how to use this method to achieve his goal." Speaking of this, Cheng Yanluo took a deep breath and said, "I can't save this person. You should leave." Chu Qingyan didn't understand why Cheng Yanluo, who was fine just a moment ago, suddenly changed her attitude. "Sister Yanluo, you can't refuse us just because we're one of your people. You don't have to tell me about your medical skills. I won't fall for it. Besides, I once swore that I would never save anyone in the Sichuan imperial family. That oath can't be broken. So, you can leave now." Cheng Yanluo's eyes faintly showed a touch of grief, but she quickly hid it. After saying this, she asked Xiaofeng to see them out and turned to leave. Seeing this, Chu Qingyan couldn't care less and reached out to stop her. Her eyes met Cheng Yanluo's impatient gaze, but she didn't back down and said sincerely, "Sister Yanluo, we're all ordinary people in this world. We have the same eyes, the same ears, the same nose, and the same mouth. It's just that we have different identities. Why do you insist on this identity? Shouldn't a medical practitioner treat patients as equals with the heart of a parent? Can you put aside your grievances with Ethereal for the time being, and help Qingyan save his highness?" At this point, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but turn her eyes to the person lying peacefully on the ground. The person might stop breathing in the next moment. Her voice was choked with sobs. A person's life is like a flash of smoke in this world. It's fleeting and so insignificant. However, a person's life can also be very great. He ignored all kinds of threats from jackals and wolves and faced difficulties head-on to eradicate evil for the people. He has never regretted it. But now he's injured for the sake of the people. He's on the verge of death and has to suffer hardships. Sister, can you temporarily put aside all kinds of things for the time being because he was injured for the sake of the people? Although Chu Qingyan didn't know what role the Sichuan imperial family played in the relationship between her and Ethereal, she could clearly feel Cheng Yanluo's disgust and deep resentment towards the Sichuan imperial family. Now that things had come to this, she could only persuade her to put aside her disgust and resentment. However, she didn't know if her words would work. Chapter 274. After Chu Qingyan finished speaking, her heart was filled with apprehension as she waited for her response. But in the end, she was disappointed. Cheng Yanluo couldn't help but give a low laugh, but that laughter was filled with endless sorrow in other people's ears. If I help you now, then who will help me in the past? Chu Qingyan slightly opened her mouth. She wanted to say something, but Cheng Yanluo was one step ahead of her. No need to say any more, I've already made up my mind. Xiao, see the guest out. As soon as her voice fell, Cheng Yanluo bypassed her. When Chu Qingyan reacted and wanted to block her again, Xiao had already walked in front of her, blocking her. Please. Seeing that Cheng Yanluo was about to enter the rear courtyard, Chu Qingyan was burning with anxiety. No, you can't just leave like this. Hualing jumped in front of Cheng Yanluo and pointed his sword at her. Miss Cheng, I hope you can save her. Xiao immediately stood in front of Cheng Yanluo and angrily said, What do you want to do? We said we won't save her, so we won't save her. Why must you force her? Cheng Yanluo looked at Hualing without fear, and her voice was filled with sarcasm. What? You want to threaten me when you can't persuade me? But this miss won't fall for it. Miss Cheng, we don't want to force you. If not for the situation, our fierce cavalry will never make things difficult for others. Turin walked forward and said in a deep voice. Now that their master didn't have much time left, they couldn't care less about everything. How much money do you want? Just say it. Hualing looked at her and said. That's right, whatever Miss Cheng wants, as long as we have it, as long as we can do it, we will definitely do it. Muling followed up. Hey, you think you're the masters of this world? You think you can satisfy people's wishes? Aren't you too naive? Cheng Yanluo shook her head. Don't treat this miss like a 3-year-old child. This miss doesn't need anything. If we practice medicine for money, we wouldn't be living here. Anyway, I'll leave my words here. This poison, I can't cure it. You should find someone else. You. Hualing was so angry that he couldn't say anything. It was rare for someone to be so unyielding while being surrounded by them. Moreover, this person was a woman. Chu Qingyan walked out from the crowd. She took a deep look at Cheng Yanluo and raised her hand. Hualing, put down your weapon. Hualing gave a cold snort. He put away his weapon and retreated behind her. Cheng Yanluo glanced at her. You won't stop me now, right? Chu Qingyan shook her head. Seeing this, Cheng Yanluo turned to leave. Sister Yanluo. Chu Qingyan suddenly called out. Cheng Yanluo stopped in her tracks, but she didn't turn around. We'll wait for you outside the door. We'll come in when you change your mind. I believe that the person who reminded me that night at the entrance of the alley that children shouldn't run around so late at night wouldn't be so cold-hearted as to leave someone in the lurch. She has the heart of a doctor's parent. After speaking, Chu Qingyan ordered Hualing and the others to leave the hospital. Cheng Yanluo's body stiffened. She stood there for a long time before she turned around. He's already gone. Senior sister, you don't have to look anymore. Xiao muttered when he saw her defeated expression. Third junior brother, do you also think that I'm too heartless? Cheng Yanluo looked at the dark sky and asked in a daze. Senior sister, actually I don't understand. What happened when eldest senior brother left? Also, what does it have to do with that King of England? Xiao looked at her and asked seriously. He still remembered that 6 years ago, after eldest senior brother had left, senior sister had locked herself in her room for 3 days and 3 nights. His master and the other junior brothers and junior sisters had been extremely worried. However, when the door opened and senior sister walked out, he discovered that the senior sister who used to be all smiles had disappeared. Her brows were filled with determination and indifference towards worldly affairs. It was as if nothing was important in her eyes, and everything was indifferent to her. However, she ordered that no one in the sect was allowed to mention eldest senior brother's name. If eldest senior brother appeared again, he would be driven out. For so many years, when Master was not around, Senior Sister had to support the entire sect by herself. It was very hard for her, but she had never complained. Usually, she still took pleasure in teasing her fellow junior brothers and sisters. However, he knew that Senior Sister had never been happy. Perhaps after eldest senior brother left, the Senior Sister who used to smile in her eyes disappeared along with him. When Xiao brought up this matter, Cheng Yanluo recalled the days and nights when she washed her face with tears. She recalled the silent answer back then, and the sadness in her heart rose again. Don't ask anymore. There's nothing to say about what happened back then. I'm tired. You'll be responsible for the opening of the library today. Xiao sighed as he watched the seemingly strong but frail person leave. In fact, Senior Sister was afraid of facing those people, so she chose to escape. Third senior brother, those people are at the door and they don't leave. Will it affect the opening of the library tomorrow? The little medical assistant looked up and asked. Let them be. Xiao waved his hand. Yes. The little medical assistant nodded obediently. Chu Qingyan placed Xiao in the carriage. At this time, Hualing and the others gathered around and asked anxiously, Young Princess Consort, what do we do now? Those people are unwilling to treat Master. We don't have much time left. The only thing we can do now is to wait. Chu Qingyan looked at the tightly shut doors of the medical library. She was also uncertain. What she was betting on now was Cheng Yanluo's kindness. Ethereal once said that she had an unyielding character. If she used coercion, it would have the opposite effect. Then there would be no cure for this poison. When everyone heard this, they also felt that there was no other way. Ethereal could have provoked anyone, but he provoked such a hag. Hualing felt that if Ethereal was in front of him, he would definitely beat him up. Don't blame Ethereal. He must have his own difficulties. Perhaps without this reason, we can't find anyone to treat His Highness. Chu Qingyan comforted everyone. Yes. Hualing lowered his head gloomily. He didn't really blame Ethereal. It was just that he felt suffocated. At this time, Chu Qingyan turned her gaze back to the people in the carriage. Her eyes were filled with shock. Turin and the others also looked over and were equally shocked. At this time, Xiaosu's lips were half purplish black and the other half white. Ethereal once said that once this happened, it meant that the effects of the Tianshan snow lotus were slowly disappearing. When the white color was forced back and the entire lips turned purplish black, the snake's kiss poison would take effect. In less than half an hour, the poisoned person would bleed from all 7 orifices and die from the pain. The death would be tragic. There's only 2 hours left, Mu Ling said in shock. Everyone fell into a terrifying silence. Chu Qingyan gritted her teeth. Her wide sleeves covered her body and she couldn't help but tremble. She reached out and held Xiaosu's hand. Her heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. She suppressed the panic in her heart. Big Ice Cube, you must hold on. Chapter 275. Inside the medical center, Cheng Yanluo tossed and turned in her room, unable to fall asleep. In the end, she simply got up and picked up a medical book to read. We will wait for you outside the door. We will come in when you change your mind. I believe that the person who reminded me that night at the entrance of the alley that children shouldn't run around so late at night won't be so heartless as to leave me in the lurch. She has the heart of a doctor and a parent. This sentence seemed to be a curse that kept ringing in her ears. After flipping through a few pages of the medical book, she couldn't continue reading. Cheng Yanluo facepalmed, recalling that little girl's solemn vow. She smiled bitterly. A doctor has the heart of a parent? She casually put down the medical book in her hand and rubbed her aching eyes. She called out to the door, Little Ten. I'm coming, I'm coming. A little doctor in green pushed open the door and entered. Cheng Yanluo put down her hand and looked at him suspiciously. Why did you appear so quickly? Little Ten rubbed his head and smiled honestly. Third senior brother told Little Ten to wait outside. He said that Senior Sister might summon me at any time. Cheng Yanluo couldn't help but roll her eyes. This Xiao was really asking for a beating. Little Ten asked curiously. Does Senior Sister have any orders? Cheng Yanluo sighed. Have those people who came to seek medical treatment left? No, they're still outside. They said that they're waiting for you to change your mind. Little Ten reported truthfully. Cheng Yanluo frowned when she heard this. Little Ten looked at her expression and slowly said, Senior sister, it's very cold outside. If Little Ten stood outside, he would probably get frostbitten. As soon as he finished speaking, Cheng Yanluo rolled her eyes at him. Did your third senior brother teach you to say this? Little Ten laughed foolishly. Senior sister is really smart. Only that brat Xiaofeng had the guts to provoke her. On the other side of the medical center, Xiaofeng suddenly sneezed. Who was speaking ill of him behind his back? Cheng Yanluo sat quietly for a while, as if she had made a big decision. An hour passed, but there was still no movement at the medical center's door. The anxious Hualing could no longer hold himself back. He pleaded with Chu Qingyan, young princess consort, allow this subordinate to break into the medical clinic and hold a knife to Cheng Yanluo's neck. Let's see if she can still be so unyielding. Chu Qingyan shook her head. No, this will only backfire. Although she could only be anxious at this time, she knew that once she used force, there would be nothing she could do. When Chu Qingyan's voice fell, a creaking sound came from the door of the clinic, which immediately attracted everyone's attention. The door opened and the little medical assistant in green walked out. But when he saw so many pairs of eyes glaring at him, he immediately retreated back in. He held on to the door and said weakly, Miss, my senior sister is looking for you, but no one else is allowed to enter. After saying that, the little doctor in green retracted his neck. Chu Qingyan was overjoyed. She instructed everyone and immediately ran over. Little Ten led her into the backyard. She originally thought that this was just a thatched cottage medical center built on the mountainside, but she didn't expect that the backyard would be a completely different world. There were all kinds of flowers and plants inside. As Little Ten walked around, he saw a small pavilion among the flowers and plants. She didn't have time to marvel at the beauty of this place, because she saw the person sitting in the pavilion. It was Cheng Yanluo, big sister Yanluo. Chu Qingyan quickly walked up to the pavilion. Wait. Cheng Yanluo raised her hand to stop her from approaching. Then she slowly said, Don't think that just because I let you in, I agreed to treat Xiaosu's poison. Then, Chu Qingyan looked deeply at her and didn't move forward. Originally, I wouldn't treat anyone in the Sichuan royal family. This is what I once swore. But you're right. A doctor has the heart of a parent. Then I'll give you a chance to convince me. Why do you want to treat Xiaosu's poison? Cheng Yanluo looked at her and said word by word. During those days, apart from resenting Morongju, she was also angry with Xiaosu. If it weren't for him, everything today wouldn't have happened. Chu Qingyan looked at her. Her watery eyes seemed to be suppressing some kind of emotion at this time. But she acted as if nothing had happened. There was a careless smile on her face. Chu Qingyan felt that she seemed to see the loneliness in Cheng Yanluo that night in ethereal. People who were troubled by love had something in common. Sister Yanluo, I don't know what happened back then that made you resent His Highness and vent your anger on the entire Sichuan royal family. Chu Qingyan walked to the stone table and said slowly, His Highness's identity can't be changed. He has the blood of the royal family. This is undeniable. Since you've said so, then you can't convince me. Cheng Yanluo leaned against the stone pillar leisurely and looked away, as if she was no longer interested in what she was going to say next. Chu Qingyan smiled. She did not give up on what she wanted to say just because of her words. But in my eyes, he's not the high and mighty king of England. He has a position that he wants to give up but can't. He doesn't want to bear but has to bear the mission. He has the two most respected people in Sichuan as his parents, but he's better off not having them. He looks rich, but he's the poorest person in the world. I don't know why you would vent your anger on such a person. Chu Qingyan's words seemed to remind her of what Morongju had said to her before he left. Little Yan, I have to save him. Then can you bear to abandon me? Little Yan, you have parents who love you and a master who respects and protects you. But my master has nothing. Now that he's seriously injured, I have to save him. At that time, she thought that she had to be abandoned just because she had more than others. Why? He was clearly a powerful person, so how could she have so much more than him? Now she was a little stunned. Chu Qingyan's affectionate and gentle voice still sounded, with a touch of sadness. Sister Yanluo, today, he doesn't have the identity of the King of England. He's just an ordinary person. He's the person I care about the most in this world. Please help me and save him. Her bright and kind eyes were full of tears. If he had a choice, he wouldn't have chosen to be born in the royal family. If he had offended you in any way, I'll ask him to apologize to you after he recovers, okay? If you still feel uncomfortable, then I'm here. I'll accept any punishment. I won't fight back as long as you save him. Cheng Yanluo turned around and looked into her eyes. She smiled miserably. What's wrong with you? In fact, Xiao didn't do anything to her back then. He was only wrong because he was Morongju's master. Her obsession when she was young had turned into a stubborn persistence today. Why did she do it? She finally had an answer now. It turned out that she was afraid that she would forget him one day. That was why she forced herself to bear a grudge. The royal family is heartless. Aren't you afraid that he'll let you down? He won't. Big Ice Cube is different. When I was lowly, he never despised me. He's always treated me like family, let alone in the future. Big Ice Cube? That's a good name. All right, I'll agree to your request. Bring him in. Ha. This reason was too. What are you talking about? Hurry up, there's less than an hour left. Oh. So she knew all about it. Chapter 276. Soon, Xiao was sent to a clean room. Cheng Yanluo sat in front of the bed and placed one hand on Xiao's wrist, feeling his pulse. Finally, she withdrew her hand with a solemn expression and said, "The Tianshan snow lotus in his body has lost its effect. I'll let him take the 9 transformation pill to delay the onset of the poison." As soon as Cheng Yanluo finished speaking, Chu Qingyan asked doubtfully, "Can't you cure the poison directly?" "At present, we don't have an antidote for snakebite poison. The only thing we can do now is to delay the onset of the poison, and by time to find a cure." Cheng Yanluo glanced at Xiao, who was lying on the bed, and looked a little distressed. Chu Qingyan's heart clenched again because of her words. "Sister Yanluo, Ethereal said that your master has developed 3 antidotes among the top 10 poisons. Isn't snakebite poison one of them?" Cheng Yanluo rolled her eyes at her. "If it was, would I have told you that I don't have an antidote? If I knew the antidote, I would have used it on His Highness. Just use your brain and you'll know. But since you're so concerned, I won't bicker with you." Chu Qingyan was flustered when she heard that there was no antidote. But when she realized that Cheng Yanluo wasn't worried at all, she felt a little strange and calmed down. "Sister Yanluo, what should we do? Do you already have an antidote?" "That's right. What's the hurry? There'll be a solution." Cheng Yanluo walked to the desk and wrote down a prescription. She handed it to Little Ten and asked him to get the herbs. Then she turned to Chu Qingyan and said, "Little sister, since you've handed him to me, you should choose to trust him. Don't worry, if nothing unexpected happens, I'll give you an antidote within 3 days." Cheng Yanluo spoke carelessly, giving people the impression that she was a charlatan. Turan and the others were worried about whether this person was reliable. The outspoken Hualing said, "Miss Cheng, are you trying to fool us? Can you really find an antidote for snakebite poison within 3 days? You're not taking this opportunity to take revenge on our master, are you?" Cheng Yanluo frowned in displeasure when she heard someone questioning her. "Little sister Qingyan, keep your servants in check. Don't go around biting people." "What bite? Speak clearly for me." Hualing's temper flared up. "It's good enough that I didn't call you a dog." Cheng Yanluo glanced at him. "You." Hualing wanted to argue with her, but was stopped by Mu Ling and the others. Chu Qingyan could tell that Cheng Yanluo didn't really want to bicker with Hualing, so she raised her hand to dismiss them. "Sister Yanluo, I'll have to trouble you then." Since she didn't want to use people she didn't trust, she chose to believe her. Little Ten will bring the decoction to you later. You'll be responsible for feeding it to His Highness," Cheng Yanluo instructed. "But His Highness can't drink anything now." Chu Qingyan looked at the person lying on the bed and felt a little troubled. She couldn't feed the unconscious Big Ice Cube at all. Then that's not something I should worry about. You can think of a way yourself, huh? My task is very important, so I'll be leaving first. Cheng Yanluo patted her shoulder in schadenfreude before walking out. Chu Qingyan blushed with shame. Was this the so-called "a doctor has a parent's heart"? What the hell? Turning her head, she saw Hualing and the others covered in dirt, with not a single part of their bodies unharmed. Chu Qingyan immediately chased them out to wash up and rest. She had already discussed this with Xiao, and he was very willing to provide them with food and lodging. When the room returned to silence, Chu Qingyan sat down on the bed. She reached out to hold that pair of ice-cold hands and said in a low voice, "Big Ice Cube, everyone is worried about you. You have to get better." At this time, Little Ten came in with a bowl of hot soup. "Sister Chu, this is the decoction senior sister ordered me to make. Quickly have His Highness drink it." "All right, thank you." Chu Qingyan took the bowl and smiled at him. Little Ten stood at attention and then said to her, "Senior sister told me that the herbs used to make this decoction are very precious. The medical hall only has enough herbs to make a single bowl, so not a single drop can be spilled, otherwise it will affect the efficacy of the decoction." After saying this, Little Ten happily walked out, leaving Chu Qingyan to face the bowl of decoction in her hands, which had turned into a statue. Now that Big Ice Cube was unconscious and his teeth were tightly clenched, how could she feed him? Wait, feed him? Could it be that she had to feed him mouth to mouth? Chu Qingyan looked at those thin lips. Although they were currently dark purple, why did she feel a different kind of sex appeal? As if they were tempting her? She subconsciously swallowed a mouthful of saliva. No, how could she let her imagination run wild at this time? Stop. When she opened her eyes again, she already had an idea in her mind. She opened the door and called Mu Ling in. "Little Princess Consort, why are you looking for this subordinate?" Mu Ling asked suspiciously. Chu Qingyan explained her predicament, and then said that she wanted to help. "I need you to help me make a tool that can be used to pass water. It's about the length of a middle finger and very thin." Chu Qingyan's detailed description was actually a real straw. Mu Ling was still a little confused at first, but after listening for a while, he understood and then turned to go to the back of the medical hall. Chu Qingyan waited for a moment, only to see him walk over with a green thing in his hand. It was a small tube made of long green leaves. She didn't know what method was used to fix it, but in any case, it was a replica of a green leaf straw. After Chu Qingyan took it, she couldn't help but want to praise him for being a little expert. When she returned to the room, the soup was still steaming. Chu Qingyan didn't delay any longer, and directly drank the medicinal soup. Then she put the green leaf straw into Xiao Su's mouth. She gently lifted it with her hand and then lowered her head, passing the medicinal soup into his mouth through the green leaf straw. Although this method was very effective, Xiao Su was completely unaware of it. In order to ensure that the medicine was not wasted, Chu Qingyan slowly fed him mouthful by mouthful. By the time she finished feeding him the entire bowl of medicine, her cheeks were already sore beyond words. Putting down the bowl, she immediately rubbed her cheeks. It seemed that feeding medicine not only relied on technique, but also physical strength. But she finally finished feeding him without missing a single drop. Chu Qingyan was just about to get up and clean up, when she glanced at Xiao Su's chest from the corner of her eyes. She found that his chest was suddenly rising and falling, and she immediately stopped. "Big Ice Cube, what's wrong with you?" Before he finished speaking, a mouthful of black blood sprayed out of Xiao Su's mouth, staining the entire blanket. Then his entire body fell heavily back onto the bed. This scene made Chu Qingyan's face turn white. She clearly felt that the Big Ice Cube's breathing had become even weaker, as if it could stop breathing at any moment. She cried out, someone come quickly." Chapter 277. Meanwhile, Cheng Yanluo had found a few medical books. She had just sat down in her room when she heard Little Ten's shouts. Senior sister, bad news. Don't you know how to talk? What's wrong with me?" Cheng Yanluo rolled her eyes at the newcomer. Little Ten waved his hands. "Senior sister, His Highness is in trouble." "What did you say?" Cheng Yanluo frowned. "Make it clear. Don't squeeze him bit by bit. Who are you trying to make anxious?" Littleton took a deep breath. Senior sister, His Highness suddenly vomited blood after drinking the medicine. Third senior brother is already on his way. As soon as he finished speaking, Cheng Yanluo tossed the medical book in her hand aside and followed after him. Why did he suddenly vomit blood? She had clearly taken his pulse just now. Without thinking much, Cheng Yanluo strode into the room prepared for Xiao Su. When she saw Xiaofeng examining Xiao Su, she immediately asked, "What's the matter?" Xiaofeng straightened his body and said regretfully, "Senior sister, His Royal Highness Prince Ying's body is rejecting the medicine you gave him. Moreover, his body is rapidly deteriorating and his pulse is already very weak. I'm afraid." "Afraid what?" Chu Qingyan grabbed his arm and asked anxiously. "I'm afraid he won't make it until morning." Xiaofeng shook his head and sighed. "What?" Chu Qingyan took several steps back and stared in disbelief at the pale-faced man lying on the bed. How could he not make it until morning? She didn't believe it. "Sister Yanluo, wasn't he fine just now? Why did he suddenly become so ill?" Chu Qingyan immediately turned to Cheng Yanluo, who was standing in the room, as if she was grasping at her only hope. Cheng Yanluo had already been observing Xiao Su's complexion when Xiaofeng spoke. She walked over and checked Xiao Su's eyelids and tongue before placing her hand on his pulse. She had an answer in her heart. She turned around and looked at Chu Qingyan with a serious expression. It may not be difficult to save a person, but to save a person who has lost his will to live. Even if you invite the Daluo immortal, there's nothing you can do. What do you mean? Chu Qingyan was stunned. Did she mean that the big ice cube didn't want to live from the bottom of his heart? In other words, he doesn't want to live anymore. That's why his body rejected the medicine he just drank and spat it out, which worsened the spread of the poison. Unfortunately, he's running a high fever now. If his fever continues, he'll die within 2 hours. Cheng Yanluo snorted coldly and turned to leave. "Impossible. How could my master have this kind of thought? Did you make a mistake?" Hualing anxiously roared. "I have confidence in my medical skills." Cheng Yanluo rolled her eyes. If it weren't for the sake of little sister Qingyan, the person who repeatedly questioned her medical skills would have been driven out of the clinic long ago. Why didn't the ice cube want to live? There was still hope for survival, so why give it up? Chu Qingyan couldn't figure it out, but when she saw that Cheng Yanluo was about to leave, Chu Qingyan immediately pulled her back. "Big sister Yanluo, where are you going? Aren't you going to save him?" Cheng Yanluo shook her head. "Why should I waste my energy to save someone who's already prepared to die? It'll even ruin the medicinal herbs." No, he won't give up on living." Chu Qingyan was a little incoherent. The big ice cube was already in such a state. If Cheng Yanluo gave up on him, then there really wouldn't be any hope left. Cheng Yanluo crossed her arms and looked at her. "Unless you can awaken his will to live. Okay, I won't let him give up." Chu Qingyan quickly nodded. "If you can't do it within 2 hours, then even Hua Tuo won't be able to save him." After saying this, Cheng Yanluo walked towards the door, but she added, "Don't stay here with so many people. It'll affect the atmosphere in the room and your master." Hualing and the others looked at each other. They all wanted to stay, but in the end it was Turin who spoke. "Everyone, leave this place to the young princess consort. I believe that she can awaken master's will in the end. Young princess consort, we'll leave master to you. Please be sure to wake him up." Although everyone was reluctant, they still nodded at Chu Qingyan in the end and quickly walked out. Because the atmosphere inside was too oppressive, everyone couldn't help but grieve in their hearts. The room returned to silence once again. Chu Qingyan stood in the room and slowly turned around. She felt that her shoulders were very heavy, as if 1,000 pounds of weight was pressing down on her. Her entire body was about to collapse. But compared to this, her chest hurt so much that she couldn't breathe. Because at this moment, she still couldn't accept the fact that the big ice cube's survival instincts were weak. She slowly walked to the front of the bed and stretched out her hand to caress the masked face. The skin was boiling hot, but it was abnormally pale. Her hand couldn't help but tremble. "Big ice cube, didn't you promise me that when I grew up, you would take me to travel the world? Now you're telling me that you don't want to anymore. Isn't this going back on your word? A gentleman's word is as good as a whip. How can you go back on your word? This is so unfair to me. If others go back on their word, I can still get them back. But if you go back on your word, how can I get them back with interest in the future? You won't be here by then. Why don't you want to anymore? Is it because you're too tired? Are you worried that once the poison is cured and your body recovers, you'll still have to face those endless missions? That there'll still be responsibilities that you can't escape from? Chu Qingyan paused and her fingers touched his brows. That usually calm expression was now hidden under his eyelids, and could no longer be seen. Big Ice Cube, you can't be selfless to Sichuan and be selfish to yourself. You can ignore those who only want to extract value from you. You can ignore those unscrupulous family members. But don't forget, there are still people who wish for you to live. Because you're their sky, you're their lord. Xiao Lychee sacrificed their lives for you. They want you to live and take revenge for them. If you give up just like that, aren't you letting down their good intentions? When she said that, she felt that the person under her fingers still didn't have any reaction. She held her breath and her nose felt sour. Is it still not enough? Chu Qingyan closed her eyes as tears flowed down her cheeks. Big Ice Cube, you can give up on Sichuan. You can give up on the imperial family. But you can't give up on me. She finally opened her heart to accept someone. But to be told that there was no such person left. This feeling of falling from the sky was truly hard to bear. In this world, other than my parents, I have no other family. You can't just leave like that. You said before that you want to watch me grow up. I haven't grown up yet. You can't go back on your words. I'm sorry. I won't be willful anymore. I won't disobey you anymore. Chapter 278. I'll be obedient in the future, okay? I'll learn martial arts from Turin. I'll do everything you say, okay? Every word was deeply ingrained in her heart. Every word was hoarse and choked with sobs. Speaking until here, Chu Qingyan hugged Xiao Su and cried out loud. Why did they have to go through so many hardships? Why was he always forced to choose the most difficult path in life when there were so many paths? Why was it so difficult to live a normal life? Big Ice Cube, you're too stupid. Why do you put the country, and the people in your heart? Our hearts are so small that it'll be crowded with 2 or 3 people, but you're holding on. Don't you feel tired? I know the pain in your heart. You've never enjoyed true family love since you were young, but don't always think about your father and mother. They're more important than you, so they can't see your good, your hard work, and your endurance. But Imperial Grandfather, me, my father, and my mother are all your family. If others don't want us, we don't want them. Isn't there a saying? Today you ignore me, tomorrow I'll make you unworthy. Don't use other people's mistakes to punish yourself. Do your part, don't tire yourself too much. Time passed little by little, and the life of the person under her seemed to be draining away little by little. Chu Qingyan cried until her voice was hoarse, but she was even more panicked. What should I do? What should I do with you? The sound in the room came intermittently. Turin and the others who were standing outside the door seemed to be standing like tree stumps. The cold wind blew over them, but they didn't feel cold. Why did everything become like this? Hualing gritted his teeth, his eyes red. He still remembered that when they first left Jingdo, although they were full of grievances, they thought that leaving the prison of Jingdo was a kind of release for their master, so they suppressed their complaints about their whereabouts. But who knew that in just a few months, they would fall into a difficult situation. Their companions were either dead or injured, and their master's life was hanging by a thread. Actually, I should have guessed it long ago. Turin closed his eyes and blamed himself. Although Master has been resisting the enemy all the way, the tactics he adopted were not as good as before. At that time, I thought it was because Master was too tired from dealing with official affairs and neglected to plan. Now that I think about it, I understand that Master at that time had already planned to not go back. Why didn't you say anything? Why did you stop him? Hualing charged forward and grabbed Turin's collar, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. Turin's hands hung on both sides of his body. His expression was pained. I also hate myself. Why didn't I discover it earlier? Perhaps this wouldn't have happened. But at that time, his master had already made up his mind. Would his words be of any use? What are you two doing? Master's life or death is unknown inside. Yet you're fighting amongst yourselves? If Master finds out, how are you going to explain it to him? After separating the two of them, the wood spirit was already mentally and physically exhausted. When she saw this scene, she felt even worse and couldn't help but reprimand. If Master finds out, even if he sends me to the torture room, I'm willing. Hua Ling's hand grabbed the tree trunk, as if he wanted to make a hole in it. When this was said, Turin and the wood spirit were both silent. They suddenly felt that in front of the death god, all human and material resources were useless. There was not much time left. Chu Qingyan lay on his chest, her eyes staring blankly. She had already said everything that she needed to say, but it was to no avail. She knew that once he made a decision, it would be hard to change it, but this habit was not good. At least it wasn't good right now. What should she do? She felt like she was being forced into a desperate situation. She suddenly thought of the past. Whenever she wanted the big ice cube to change his mind, she would always drag herself into the water. So she leaned over to his ear and softly said, "Big ice cube, it's fine. It's fine if you don't want to stay, I'll go with you. I'm too stupid. Since you don't like this world, then I'll accompany you in reincarnation. Why should I force you to stay, right? It's fine to go somewhere else, as long as I'm by your side. There's no meaning to life without you." As soon as her voice fell, the large hand she was holding suddenly grabbed her. Chu Qingyan almost cried because of his actions. But she couldn't let down her guard. She had to add more fire to his heart. "You're holding my hand so tightly. Are you afraid that I'll get lost? It's fine, walk slowly. I'll catch up to you later. I just found out from Big Sister Yen Luo that there's a kind of herb that can let a person die in their sleep without feeling any pain. Wait a moment, I'll go find her to get it." Chu Qingyan pretended to get up, but the hand that was firmly holding her suddenly pulled, causing her to fall onto his body, but she cleverly avoided his wound. She just happened to be close to his chest, so she could feel his weak heartbeat, which she couldn't hear earlier, start to beat normally again. Her heart was filled with joy, and hot tears filled her eyes. "Big Ice Cube, do you not want to leave?" The person lying there quietly didn't answer her. What replied her was his increasingly stable heartbeat. "Huoling Turin, quickly go and call Big Sister Yen Luo. His Highness's breathing has recovered." The people waiting outside were startled when they heard this, but they quickly reacted and responded loudly, then quickly went to call for help. In the corridor, Cheng Yanluo leaned against a pillar, lazily looking at the other side of the mountain. Xiao saw her and walked over. "Senior sister, aren't you tired? Why aren't you resting? What are you thinking about here?" "I'm thinking about how to control the poison in Xiaosu's body." Cheng Yanluo yawned, then unhurriedly replied. "What's the use of thinking about this? He might not be able to make it." Xiao shook his head, laughing at her useless effort. Cheng Yanluo supported her chin with one hand. Her previous sleepiness was swept away, and her eyes were filled with interest. "No, I think that little girl will pull him back at the gates of hell." "Why do you think so?" Xiao was a little surprised. "Because..." Cheng Yanluo paused, then smiled slyly. "A woman's intuition." "A woman's intuition? What the hell was that?" Xiao expressed his confusion. At this moment, Huoling's anxious footsteps came from afar. When he saw Cheng Yanluo, he immediately rushed over. "Miss Cheng, my master has already regained consciousness." Xiao jaw almost dropped when he heard this. Cheng Yanluo smiled, not surprised at all. She stretched out her hand and lightly tapped her temple, then said to Xiao, "See, this is a woman's intuition." Before Xiao could regain his senses, he heard his senior sister's laughing voice. "Little Ten, you can start brewing the medicine again." "Yes." Little Ten replied loudly. Chapter 279. Not long after Chu Qingyan called out, Cheng Yanluo came in. "Sister Yanluo, I've done it. Now I can help His Highness delay the poison. I'm counting on you." Chu Qingyan said impatiently. Cheng Yanluo's gaze swept over the tightly clasped hands, then landed on Xiaosu's body. She leaned over to check. Chu Qingyan wanted to get up and give her the position, But she found that the big ice cube's grip on her hand was too strong. She couldn't break free no matter how hard she tried. Chu Qingyan rubbed her head in embarrassment. You're quite strong. It seems like you don't want to commit suicide anymore. Cheng Yanluo smiled and teased. She didn't check and directly said to little Shi, bring the medicine up. This is. Chu Qingyan looked at the medicine in her hand, and felt that the smell was somewhat familiar. This is the medicine that was brewed again. His Highness has vomited all the medicine that he drank before. Little Shi explained with a smile. Didn't you say that there was only enough herbs to brew one bowl? Chu Qingyan glanced at Cheng Yanluo. She felt that the most important thing right now was the big ice cube's body. She didn't ask anything and sat back down on the bed. Xiao, who knew his senior sister well, knew what was going on when he saw Chu Qingyan's expression. He couldn't help coughing lightly. Actually, their medical hall had sufficient herbs for this prescription, but in order to ensure that the patient's family members didn't waste the medicine, senior sister had to instruct her junior brothers and sisters. There was once a family member who questioned her, but senior sister had lightly retorted. What? Don't you know that wasting is a very shameful thing? That was how senior sister's reputation for being stingy and stingy spread. That's right. We've delayed for too long. We have to feed him the medicine immediately. If he doesn't drink the entire bowl of medicine within the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, then, Cheng Yanluo shrugged, indicating that they should all understand the subtext. Thus she sauntered out the door. Xiao frowned. Was senior sister trying to fool him again? Hualing and the others immediately turned their eyes to the two people on the bed. Strictly speaking, it should be their little princess. Chu Qingyan, who was holding a straw, froze when she heard Cheng Yanluo's words. It was impossible to use a straw. However, with so many expectant gazes in front of her, Chu Qingyan immediately felt the pressure. She suddenly remembered the last method. However, with so many pairs of eyes glaring at her, she felt a little awkward. Turin, you guys go out first. Although Tu Ling and the others were a little confused, they still obediently left the room and closed the door. When only she and Xiao Su were left in the room, Chu Qingyan looked at the bowl and took a deep breath. She muttered to herself, Big ice cube, I didn't mean to take advantage of you. The situation is special, so we have to deal with it specially. With that, she swallowed the medicine in one gulp. Then she leaned forward and kissed his thin lips. When their lips touched, the soft touch made her tremble uncontrollably. She didn't expect that the usually cold and indifferent person's lips would be so soft. It was like a jelly in the modern world. She couldn't help but want to take a bite. Chu Qingyan was startled by the sudden thought in her mind. How could she let her imagination run wild at this time? She immediately dispelled those charming thoughts in her mind. There was no time for her to hesitate. She closed her eyes and found a position on his lips. At first, she felt that the big ice cube was resisting. However, she didn't know why, but when she was anxious to leave and land on his lips again, he finally let go. She immediately took the opportunity to carefully use her tongue to pry open his lips and teeth. Then she slowly passed the medicine in her mouth into his mouth. After feeding him in one gulp, she immediately raised her head and drank a big gulp. She repeated the action just now. Soon she finished feeding him the medicine in the bowl. Just now, Xiao said that after feeding him the medicine, if the dark purple color on his lips faded, it meant that the poison was under control. Therefore, Chu Qingyan immediately stared at his lips. After a while, his lips really did turn light black. Chu Qingyan was happy in her heart. However, after the great joy, she was deeply tired. She laid on his chest and said softly, Big ice cube, I'm really happy that you stayed for me just now. I told you that you don't have nothing. You still have me. Living is not an easy thing. Don't believe that there is reincarnation in this world. Grasping the present is the most important thing. In her daze, she didn't know what she said, but a thought floated in her mind. It seemed like the one being taken advantage of wasn't the big ice cube, but herself. But just as she was about to fall asleep, she was suddenly awakened by herself. No, she couldn't sleep yet. She still had things to do. After settling the big ice cube, Chu Qingyan stood up and walked out of the room. At this time, the first ray of morning light pierced through the clouds and shone on the ground. Chu Qingyan looked at the sunlight. Although the morning sun was still cold, she felt a little warm. They had finally passed the darkness and waited for dawn. All the waiting was worth it. Little Ten was standing at the door. Chu Qingyan lowered her head and asked with a smile, "Little Ten, where's your senior sister?" "Oh, it's already opened, but senior sister should be in the backyard." Little Ten shook his head and said. Chu Qingyan nodded and smiled. "Little Ten, help me take care of His Highness first. I'll go look for your senior sister. I'll be back soon." "Okay, leave it to me." Little Ten patted his chest. Chu Qingyan looked at the little boy, who was not even 7 years old, doing this. Although it was a little funny, he looked very cute. She reached out and patted his head, smiling as she thanked him. Chu Qingyan followed her memory and found the backyard. At this time, Cheng Yanluo was holding a small hoe and weeding the herb garden. When she raised her hand to wipe her sweat, she saw Chu Qingyan slowly walking over. She stopped and supported herself with the hoe with one hand. She smiled and teased, "What are you doing here instead of accompanying His Highness?" When Chu Qingyan heard this, she couldn't help but think of the matter of feeding the medicine just now. Her face couldn't help but turn red. She coughed lightly to cover it up, then said, "What are you doing here?" "Weeding." Cheng Yanluo spread out her hands. "Usually, when my mind is in a mess and I don't have a clue, I'll come here to weed to calm myself down." Chu Qingyan knew that she was troubled by the method of detoxifying Big Ice Cube. She said sincerely, "Thank you for being willing to help us, Sister Yanluo." "What's there to thank me for? I'm not detoxifying you for free. When the time comes, the waiting fee will be the same. You can't go back on your word," Cheng Yanluo said nonchalantly. Then she smiled at Chu Qingyan. "Besides, didn't you already guess that I would agree to help you?" Chu Qingyan didn't feel embarrassed at being seen through. Instead, she said generously, "Because I believe that a kind person won't be cold-blooded and heartless." "Isn't that right, Sister Yanluo?" Chu Qingyan smiled brightly at her. Cheng Yanluo glanced at her. Why did she feel that her bright smile was so dazzling? Chapter 280. You little brat. You really know how to read people's minds. If you're already like this at such a young age, how will you harm others when you grow up? Cheng Yanluo couldn't help but reach out to pinch her little face. She had wanted to do this for a long time. This water spirit's delicate skin really made people green with envy. Chu Qingyan cried out in pain from the pinch. She finally managed to free her little face from Cheng Yanluo's hands, only to see Cheng Yanluo pointing at her face and laughing hysterically. Chu Qingyan followed her gaze and touched her face. When she opened her hands, she saw that they were full of mud. She couldn't help but blush with shame. What a strange older sister. She was just a likable older sister. "All right, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I'm too tired after a night of torment. I'm going to catch up on some sleep. You can do whatever you want. Don't bother me if there's nothing important." Cheng Yanluo stuffed the hoe in her hand into her hand, yawned, and left leisurely. Chu Qingyan looked at the receding figure, and then at the hoe in her hand. She suddenly felt like crying but had no tears. The sky gradually brightened, and even the mountains in the distance could be seen clearly. Chu Qingyan gripped the hoe in her hand tightly, and smiled slightly. Actually, the words she had said to Cheng Yanluo and the fact that she had stayed outside the door was actually a gamble. She felt that she had a chance of winning, but she wasn't completely sure at that time. She hated gambling with her life, but at that time, she had no other way out and could only struggle for survival. Fortunately, she believed in the pureness of human nature and was right. She hoped that Sister Yanluo would be able to find the antidote within 3 days. After pondering for a while, she slowly walked back with the hoe in her hand. When she reached a large tree, she was startled by the sudden appearance of someone. It was Ethereal, dressed in white. Chu Qingyan patted her chest and sighed. "Ethereal, do you know that my heart is very weak now? I can't take any more shocks. Can you please make some noise when you walk?" Ethereal replied apologetically. "This subordinate didn't mean to. I heard that Master almost couldn't suppress the snake's kiss poison. How are you now?" "It's under control. You don't have to worry." Chu Qingyan hugged the hoe and comforted her. She could feel that Ethereal had changed a lot overnight. Her expression was a little bleak, and there was a faint melancholy between her brows. That's good. Ethereal breathed a sigh of relief. Chu Qingyan saw his hesitant expression and knew that he still had something to ask, so she didn't rush to leave. Ethereal hesitated for a long time before asking, is my junior sister doing well? Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows. Ethereal, I think you'd better ask the person in question. Because I've never seen her in the past, I don't know if she's good or bad compared to her past. Ethereal's eyes immediately darkened. Young Consort is right, but it's not suitable for me to disturb her now. It's not up to you to decide whether it's suitable or not. Chu Qingyan raised a finger and shook it. If there's no obsession in one's heart, one won't always remember the past. I think if there's any misunderstanding, it's better to resolve it. We can consider whether we should help each other in need or forget each other in the pugilistic world. As soon as she finished speaking, Chu Qingyan didn't see Ethereal's transformation. Instead, he looked at her in horror. Is there something wrong with what I said? Chu Qingyan was at a loss as to what was going on. Young Consort, you know so much. Ethereal still looked like he'd seen a ghost. Think about it, a 10-year-old girl chatting with you and teaching you about love between men and women. Wasn't that too sensational? Young Consort was too precocious, wasn't she? Chu Qingyan's mouth twitched. It's over. She forgot that she was still a 10-year-old child. Was it really good to be exposed so quickly? What's that? I suddenly remembered that His Highness needs someone to take care of him. I'll go back first. Chu Qingyan stuffed the hoe in her hand into his hand, and then slipped away. After going around in circles, her hoe still fell into his hands. Just like some people, even if they went in a big circle, they still had to return to the same place to find the person they'd lost. Noon. Cheng Yanluo woke up from her sleep and stretched. After washing up, she felt refreshed. She sat back on the chair and opened the medical book on the table. Now that her thoughts were back, she could start studying the detoxification method of snakebite poison. After flipping through half of the book, there was a light knock on the door. She didn't raise her head and said, "Come in." Xiao came in with a plate of food. "Senior sister, I didn't see you come out to eat at lunchtime, so I brought this over. You're so considerate. If you get married in the future, I won't have anyone to order around." Cheng Yanluo expressed that the future was very distressing. Xiao placed the food on her table and said helplessly, "Senior sister, it's time for you to find a husband. Otherwise, I can't serve you for the rest of my life." Cheng Yanluo raised her head and looked at him lovingly with her watery eyes. There's a good saying, if I'm not married, and you're not married, why don't we be together? As soon as she said that, there seemed to be something outside the windowsill that made a sound. Xiao immediately ran over and stuck his head out to take a look. He saw that a pot of medicinal herbs had fallen over, and there was no one around. He couldn't help but scratch his head. Could it be that stray cat again? He turned around as he thought about it. When he met Senior Sister's gaze, he suddenly felt a little scared. "Senior Sister, I'm panicking when you look at me like that." "Panicking?" Cheng Yanluo retracted her gaze and said speechlessly, "You can't even take a joke. Forget it. You'd better hurry up and find a husband and get married." "Senior sister, I'm a man." Xiao pursed his lips. I know. Why are you shouting so loudly? Are you trying to make me deaf?" Cheng Yanluo picked at her ears and said in disdain. Xiao suddenly felt so miserable that he wanted to squat in the corner and draw circles. However, he remembered the important matter. "Senior sister, can you really find a way to cure the snakebite poison in 3 days?" Cheng Yanluo continued to flip through the medical book in her hand and replied, "Back then, my father devoted himself to researching the antidotes for the 10 deadly poisons. In fact, he wasn't only able to develop 3 of them. It was because my father's good friend was critically ill at that time. He didn't have time to continue his research and left. Although he left in a hurry, he left some manuscripts with ideas on how to cure the snakebite poison. Now that these manuscripts are in my hands and I've been organizing them, I have a rough idea in mind. It's just that I haven't put it into practice yet." "I see. Then the King of England's poisoning gives you a chance to cure the poison. Xiao nodded. Cheng Yanluo's finger tapped lightly on one of the pages. Suddenly, an idea flashed through her mind and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. I think I don't need 3 days. 1 day should be enough. Chapter 281. Chu Qingyan sat on the bed, wiping the sweat off Xiao Su's face from time to time. His fever hadn't subsided after taking the medicine this morning, but as the medicine began to take effect, his body began to sweat and his body temperature gradually returned to normal. She leaned over and reached out to touch his forehead. Finally, it wasn't as hot as before, and she was relieved. After retracting her hand, she looked at the person on the bed seriously. His long and thick eyelashes were curled up. She didn't pay much attention to them before, but now she felt that they were unusually good-looking. They were even longer and curlier than a girl's. She wanted to put some matches on his eyelashes to see how many matches she could put. Even as a girl, she felt a little jealous. His pale cheeks due to excessive blood loss looked sickly beautiful. His dark lips were slightly pursed, and the lines of his lips were clear and charming. Suddenly, she felt that the usually cold and hard big block of ice actually had an enchanting and sexy side to him. Sure enough, when a person was sick and weak, they showed their most real side. When she looked at his lips, she couldn't help but think of the medicine he gave her this morning. Her cheeks heated up again. This was the first time she had intimate contact with a man. She had lived for 20 years and had never been in a relationship. The men around her who liked her always ended up becoming her male best friends for various reasons. She had once been teased by her roommates because her aura was too strong. Those men couldn't stand her, so they all gave up and left. At that time, she felt extremely wronged. It was only because she was in an important position, whether it was the student council, the club, or the class, that she had to do things neatly. So when she was serious, she was described as domineering. But when she wasn't serious, she was also soft and easy to bully. But for some reason, when she transmigrated into Shui's body, she didn't have any responsibilities, and her life was much more relaxed than before. Chu Qingyan shifted her gaze from Xiao Su and covered her eyes in embarrassment. Sigh, was it because she had focused on her studies and work in the past, and hadn't had intimate contact with the opposite sex? Was that why her mind was in such a mess now? But what Chu Qingyan didn't know was that, in many cases, falling in love with a person started from a small conflict. Was it just a kiss? It was just a light touch. Conflict my ass. No, it seemed like there was more than one. Ah! Bang! At this moment, the sound of the door being pushed open was heard. Chu Qingyan, whose soul had drifted away, was so frightened that she almost fell off the bed. Cheng Yanluo pushed the door open and saw Chu Qingyan looking like she had seen a ghost. She scratched her head and said, "Why do you look like this? Are you stunned by this sister's fairy-like appearance?" Chu Qingyan straightened her clothes and shook her head solemnly at the end of her sentence, as well as the slight upturn in the corner of her eyes. "This sister is so scary." "That's good." Cheng Yanluo walked into the room leisurely. Chu Qingyan stood up, somewhat puzzled by her arrival at this time. She clearly said in the morning that she was going to catch up on sleep. At this time, a bold guess flashed through his mind. "Sister Yanluo, have you made any progress in the antidote for the snake's kiss poison?" she probed. Cheng Yanluo walked around the room and stood in front of her. She looked at her with a hint of admiration in her eyes. "Not bad. You're quite smart." When Chu Qingyan heard this, her heart was filled with joy. She was so excited that before she could find her voice, she saw Cheng Yanluo raise 2 fingers and wave them in front of her eyes. "I came here today to tell you 2 pieces of news. One is good news and the other is bad news. Which one do you want to hear first?" Chu Qingyan was stunned. This scene was so familiar. It was often played out on TV. Good news generally represented what one wanted to do the most at that moment, but bad news would make one fall from joy to hell. Now that it happened to him, he had a bad feeling about it. "Let's hear the good news first." Chu Qingyan didn't hesitate. She had to at least confirm whether the big ice cube could cure the poison. Cheng Yanluo nodded and walked back and forth in front of her with her hands behind her back. she said unhurriedly. I've found the antidote for the snake's kiss poison. It wasn't difficult to find the antidote based on her father's handwritten letter and her previous understanding of poisons. However, the difficult part was, Chu Qingyan clasped her hands together. She was overjoyed. The big ice cube's poison could finally be cured. This arduous journey wasn't in vain. However, she didn't dare to celebrate too early. What about the bad news? Cheng Yanluo was a little surprised by the little girl's lack of joy. She was really a little girl who was good at hiding her true feelings. She stood in front of her and said in a low voice, although we've found a way to cure the poison, it's difficult to gather the herbs needed to cure the poison. If they had the antidote but didn't have the herbs, it was equivalent to not being able to decipher it. What herbs do you need? Chu Qingyan didn't feel dejected and immediately asked. The snake's kiss poison was developed from the venom of the king of snakes. Although the snake king's entire body is highly toxic, there is always something that can subdue another in this world. There will always be something that can subdue it. Thus, the snake king is most afraid of three things in this world. The first is the ice crystal flower, the second is the redstone fruit, and the last is the love leaf. These three are called the three holy flowers and fruit leaves. However, they are very rare and only exist in medical books. They're basically extinct in this world, because the conditions for survival of these three plants are very harsh. The ice crystal flower needs the coldest place to take root and germinate. The redstone fruit comes from the redstone flower, but the redstone flower only bears fruit once every 30 years. The love leaf is even more difficult to find because it grows day by day and night by night. Cheng Yanluo recalled the records in the medical books and slowly explained it to her. It could be said that the snake's kiss poison was the collection of the rarest herbs in the history of medicine. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but widen her eyes. She didn't know much about medicine, but that didn't stop her from understanding. These three herbs sounded really hard to find. She couldn't help but want to roar at the sky. After torturing the big ice cube for so long, why didn't it let her go? Could it be that it's blind? Can't it see such a righteous person? Her heart was surging with emotions, but what came surging was sorrow. No, she wouldn't give up so quickly. Having the antidote is a good start. Sister Yanluo, do you know where these three herbs can be found? Chu Qingyan took a deep breath and looked up at her. Cheng Yanluo nodded with satisfaction. I like your stubbornness. Although she was very anxious, she couldn't help but sweat when she heard Cheng Yanluo's description. Stubbornness? Was it really a compliment? These three herbs haven't appeared for a long time. I don't know where they are either. Cheng Yanluo shrugged. Even you don't know where they are? Chu Qingyan frowned. That was going to be difficult. Don't be so impatient. I'm not done yet. Cheng Yanluo stretched out her finger and shook it. I suddenly thought of something. What is it? Chapter 282. She was as anxious as a cat on a hot tin roof, but Cheng Yanyan's habit of speaking in riddles was unbearable for her. Cheng Yanluo felt that the little girl had been teased enough, so she decided not to beat around the bush. She smiled and said directly, I remember that before my father left for his travels, he handed over the entire sect to me and gave me a box. He said that there was a detoxifying fruit inside. I didn't notice it at the time, but now that I think about it, it might be the red flower fruit. Cheng Yanluo's words ignited the hope in Chu Qingyan's eyes. Sister Yanluo, can you go back and see if the box is still there? If that's the case, then we have one of the three most difficult to find herbs. Chu Qingyan suddenly felt that her words were a little abrupt. Cheng Yanluo had only mentioned it and didn't say that she would give it to her. After all, the red flower fruit was so precious. How could she give it to her so easily? Chu Qingyan hesitated for a moment, then pursed her lips and said, Sister Yanluo, I'm sorry. I was a little anxious. Cheng Yanluo knew what she meant and couldn't help laughing. Why are you thinking so much? Although I'm a little stingy, I didn't promise you that I would save your life. Besides, we haven't confirmed it yet, so don't be so happy. Chu Qingyan heard this and smiled. Touched, she said, Sister Yanluo, you are such a nice person. Cheng Yanluo immediately retreated. No. Don't praise me. I can't stand these things. Wait here, I'll go back and find out where it is. With that, she turned around and left the room. Chu Qingyan looked at Cheng Yanluo's departing figure and felt a sense of gratitude. She walked back to the bed and continued to nag at Big Ice Cube. Big Ice Cube, although there are many unfair and unexpected things in our lives, we will meet some good people from time to time. Sister Yanluo seems to be a woman of her words, but she's a good girl with a sharp tongue but a soft heart. I don't know why she misunderstood you. If you wake up in the future and have a chance, you should explain it to her and resolve the misunderstanding. Maybe then everyone will be happy. Besides, Sister Yanluo is such a good person. Why did Ethereal betray her in the first place? Actually, I don't know what happened between the two of them, but if the two of them can bury the hatchet and get back together, that would be even better. The man is handsome and delicate, and the woman is bright and generous. They look like a good match. Sai, you're in such a dangerous situation right now, and I still want to be your matchmaker. Chu Qingyan shook her head and laughed at herself. In fact, she was just trying to find joy in the midst of bitterness. Waiting was an unbearable thing. If she did not distract herself, she would definitely let her imagination run wild. Just as she was feeling vexed and self-deprecating, the large hand in her hand suddenly grabbed her. She was shocked as she looked at the slowly closing fingers in surprise. She immediately raised her head to look at the person on the bed, but to her disappointment, the Big Ice Cube's eyes were still tightly shut. Ever since he had fainted in the cave, he had not woken up again. This morning he had regained consciousness, but he still did not wake up. Chu Qingyan pressed her face against the back of his hand. Big Ice Cube, are you comforting me? Relax, I'm not that weak. No matter if it's in heaven or earth, no matter if it's a mountain of blades or a sea of flames, no matter how difficult it is, I will help you gather all the herbs and help you cure the poison. Even if I have to sacrifice everything, I want you to live. Before that, you just need to properly rest. You don't need to worry about anything. I will help you take care of everything. After a while, Xiao Su seemed to sense her thoughts and slowly let go of her hand. Chu Qingyan revealed a faint smile. After a moment of silence, there was a knock on the door. Chu Qingyan straightened up and said, "Come in." Turin and Huoling walked in together. "What is it?" Chu Qingyan was puzzled. "Little princess, today we contacted Water Spirit. She sent a message to tell us that we don't know how the news of Master's disappearance came to light. Right now, His Majesty has ordered the local government to search for Master's whereabouts. At the same time, people have been sent from the capital to search. What should we do now? Should we get in touch with the local government?" The Earth Spirit reported. Chu Qingyan instantly furrowed her brows. From the attack on the Big Ice Cube to his disappearance, it had only been a short 3 to 4 days. How could the capital have received the news so quickly? Could it be that the saying that the mountain was high and the emperor was far away was just a lie? Did every emperor have spies all over the country? Suddenly, Chu Qingyan remembered the conversation between the Big Ice Cube and the cloaked person in the rain. She hadn't paid attention to it at the time, but thinking about it now, she felt that there was a hidden meaning behind those words. Could it be that the cloaked person was related to the imperial family? This thought made her body freeze. Although it was very bold of her to think this, but what if the truth was like this? No, she couldn't risk the Big Ice Cube's life. Don't contact him yet. His Highness is poisoned right now. If his whereabouts are leaked, it will be very disadvantageous for us. Chu Qingyan made a prompt decision. Turin looked at her in surprise. He had thought that the little Wangfei would seek the protection of the local officials, but he hadn't thought that her thoughts were so cautious. He nodded. This subordinate also thinks so. Turin's reply also surprised Chu Qingyan. She couldn't help but think that Turin had come to ask for her opinion, because he also had suspicions about the imperial family. This made her even more convinced of the cloaked person's origins. But now that the Sichuan emperor had given the order, how could she waste this opportunity? Chu Qingyan's eyes flashed and a sly smile appeared on her lips. Although our whereabouts can't be leaked, it doesn't mean that we can't leak the whereabouts of those assassins. They caused us so much trouble, so they should suffer a bit and have a taste of being coveted by others. Turin, Think of a way to leak the information of those enemies to the local officials. Yes. When those local officials heard the order from the capital, in order to find the whereabouts of their masters, they were eager to gain merit. Once they heard that there were rebels attacking their masters, in order to steal merit, they would definitely send out troops to capture them. At that time, those assassins would be like rats on the street. Not only would they be able to get their revenge, they would also be able to slow down the enemy's footsteps, making them unable to take care of themselves and have no energy to chase after them. Turin and Hualing looked at each other. They suddenly felt that the little Wang Fei in front of them wasn't as innocent and naive as before. When she acted cute, no one could beat her. When she played tricks, she was incomparably cunning. They suddenly felt a little worried for their master's future. After Turin and Hualing left, Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows. What was with their expressions just now? Could it be that I'm a scourge? Chapter 283. After leaving Xiao Su's room, Cheng Yanluo went back to her own room. As soon as she entered the room, she began to feel troubled. Where did she put the box? She remembered that she was annoyed by the old man's long-winded nagging, so she threw the box into the room. Now she didn't know if she could find it. She suddenly felt a little depressed. Forget it, let's find it first. Thus, she rolled up her sleeves and began to search. After a while, Xiao knocked on the door and entered. He saw his senior sister rummaging through the boxes and cabinets. Senior sister, what are you doing? I'm looking for a box to confirm if it contains the redstone fruit. Oh right. Why are you looking for me? Why don't you find a place to sit? Cheng Yanluo was too busy to bother with him. Xiao stood outside the door and didn't enter at all. He scanned the room. Was his senior sister sure that there was still room to walk? Forget it, he'd better stand outside and say, Senior sister, junior sister little Gio just went through the accounts book and said that our sec's income this month can't make ends meet. Now the remaining silver in the storehouse is not enough to support next month's expenses. She asked if we have any solutions. When Cheng Yanluo heard this, her fingers paused in the middle of rummaging. She slowly stood up and looked defeated. I remember that not long ago, I treated a wealthy businessman and received a lot of consultation fees. So soon, we're out of money again? Xiao looked at his senior sister helplessly. Senior sister, you must have remembered wrongly. That wealthy businessman happened last month. In the past, you said that you don't accept consultation fees from the poor or only accept payment for medicine. Now that our medical center is becoming more and more famous, many people are coming because of our reputation, and we're taking in more and more poor patients. Basically, we're giving away good herbs for free, so our medical center can't sustain itself anymore. His senior sister was kind-hearted, but she couldn't handle so many people. If this continued, their medical center might close down and the entire sect might. He originally wanted to delay this matter for a while, but now that it was getting more and more urgent, he had no choice but to report it to his senior sister. Cheng Yanluo's expression changed slightly. She raised her hand and held her forehead weakly. I understand. I'll think of a way to deal with this matter. Xiao glanced at her. He knew in his heart that it was already very difficult for a weak woman like her to support the entire sect. He didn't want to add to her troubles, so he nodded and left. The sound of footsteps behind her gradually faded away. Cheng Yanluo sighed softly. Her father had left without a word and left such a big sect to her. She had been supporting it for so many years, but she didn't expect it to end up like this. She slapped her forehead. Forget it. Let's deal with the matter at hand first. Just as she bent down, she saw a reddish-brown wooden box lying quietly under the bed. She suddenly smiled. She finally found this little thing. Cheng Yanluo took out the wooden box and opened it, ignoring the dust on her body. There was a fist-sized red fruit inside, covered with a thin layer of silver powder. She recognized the silver powder. It was ground from primrose grass and used to store the red flower fruit, so that it wouldn't rot. Primrose grass was extremely precious and hard to find even with 1,000 gold coins. Now that it had been used to store this fruit, it went without saying that this was the red stone fruit. She couldn't help but smile. It seemed that the old man had really left something good for her. Tsk. She heard that the King of England had been conferred titles and rewards all year round, so his family must be well off. Since she had saved him, it wasn't excessive to exchange a fruit for some silver taels, and let him bleed a little. She gently tossed the box in her hand, and her eyes revealed a sly look like a fox. The little girl in the room must be waiting anxiously. She didn't think much and stepped out of the room. Just as she passed through the long corridor and arrived at the small bamboo garden, Cheng Yanluo suddenly stopped. 10 steps in front of her, there was a figure standing with his back to her. He was handsome and slender, and his white robe fluttered. He was still the same person from her memory, but for some reason, she had an illusion that things were still the same, but he had changed. Her eyes were slightly hot, as if something was about to rush out. No, she had once told herself that if they met again, her eyes wouldn't turn red. He wasn't worth any of her tears. As if sensing her gaze, the person slowly turned around. Junior sister, long time no see. Cheng Yanluo's eyes suddenly narrowed. The touch of red in her eyes had disappeared because of this familiar voice. Ethereal looked deeply at her. His eyes were full of nostalgia, reluctance, and regret. But when he saw the vigilant and cold look of the person in front of him, his pupils involuntarily shrank. She still held a grudge against him for what had happened in the past. Sir, you've got the wrong person. I'm the eldest disciple in our sect, so I don't have any senior brothers or sisters, Cheng Yanluo said coldly. Ethereal sighed. Xiao, I'm Morongju, the eldest disciple of the 13th generation. No matter how much you resent me, this is a fact that can't be changed. That was in the past. Ever since you betrayed the sect, I didn't acknowledge your existence. When I took over the position of managing the sect from my father, I removed your name from the list. You used to be my disciple, but you're no longer my disciple now. Also, I'm not familiar with you, so you can't call me Xiao. After Cheng Yanluo finished speaking, she wanted to walk around him, but Ethereal reached out and stopped her. Xiao, can you really not forgive me for what happened in the past? The coldness in Xiao eyes made his heart clench uncontrollably. Although he had imagined in the past thousands of days that she would definitely hate him when they met again, when the day really came, he realized that no matter how much mental preparation he had made, a single look from her could easily break down his defenses. In the past? What happened in the past? Why don't I know about it? Cheng Yanluo turned around and asked sarcastically. She seemed to be a little impatient with his pestering. Morongju, why are you approaching me now? You're a real man. If you have something to say it directly. There's no need to flatter me. Ethereal was slightly stunned. He smiled bitterly and said, Xiao, I do have a favor to ask of you this time. As soon as he finished speaking, a touch of pain flashed through Cheng Yanluo's eyes. Sure enough, he didn't come back out of his own heart. Just like when he first joined the sect, he came back with a purpose. Say it. She resisted the urge to turn around and leave, and said without a change in her expression. Ethereal took a deep breath and looked at her again. I heard from Xiaofeng that 3 rare medicinal herbs are needed to detoxify the snake's kiss poison. I remember that master said that he obtained a redstone fruit by accident. Now that he has handed the sect over to you, he should have given you the redstone fruit as well, so... Ethereal lowered his eyebrows and didn't look at her. So, can you not implicate my master in what happened in the past? Give me the redstone fruit. You can hit or scold me for what happened in the past, but I won't say a word. Because he looked away at the end of his words, he didn't see the shattering in her eyes when he said the last sentence. Chapter 284. Ethereal fell silent for a moment, waiting for her response. But all he heard was stifled breathing. He couldn't help but turn to look at her again. His eyes met with a pair of sorrowful eyes. He was stunned and didn't know what to say. He seemed to have returned to that day when he was about to leave. Xiaoyan had looked at him with the same eyes. He still couldn't forget it even when he woke up from a dream in the middle of the night. Why do you think I'm reluctant to give you the redstone fruit? She asked, enunciating each word. Back then, you found the peerless herb with great difficulty. A disciple of your sect was injured and needed the herb, but you, Ethereal hadn't recovered from his shock, but he had already spoken. When he realized what he had said, Ethereal abruptly shut his mouth. So that was what he was talking about. Cheng Yanluo couldn't help but laugh. Are you trying to say that I didn't want to give the herb to that disciple of mine back then because he had a grudge with me? Ethereal looked at her and didn't reply. She already knew the answer. Cheng Yanluo shook her head. She didn't have the energy to explain. If that disciple of hers hadn't drugged his food and made him unconscious, she wouldn't have had to climb the cliff to pick the peerless herb on a stormy night. Later, that disciple of hers found out that she had the herb and pretended to be injured to ask for it from her. After she saw through him, he made up a rumor that she used her status as master's daughter to harm fellow disciples and bully new disciples. Sometimes she really wanted to smash his brain open with something to see what was going on inside. Why did he always believe in others and not her character? Forget it, forget it. Forget it. Kongling sensed that she was in low spirits and wanted to go up to her. However, she glanced at him indifferently without any emotion. Just like that, she brushed past his shoulder and walked behind him. For a moment, he seemed to feel that the gust of wind that brushed past him just now seemed to represent that the fate between the two of them had ended. He turned around and saw the young princess consort's figure. Xiaoyan walked in front of her and showed her the box in her hand. Little sister Qingyan, you didn't disappoint. You finally found the redstone fruit. Is this the redstone fruit? Chu Qingyan looked at the luminous pearl-sized fruit in the box and couldn't help but exclaim. Cheng Yanluo put the box away and raised her eyebrows. It's the real deal, and I'm honest with you. But, she smiled slyly. It's easy to get this figure. Our medical center is a little tight on cash recently. Could His Highness Prince Ing help us? Hearing this request, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but smile. No problem. The King of England's mansion will support all the expenses of your clinic for the next 10 years. Cheng Yanluo was a little doubtful. Can you make decisions for the King of England? You're not the official princess consort yet, right? Chu Qingyan shrugged. But a person's life is always more important than money. You don't bring it with you when you're born, and you don't bring it with you when you die. You can't just stuff money into your coffin when you're old. In any case, the finances of the King of England's mansion are in my hands now. I have the final say in everything related to money. Cheng Yanluo felt that this little girl was becoming more and more to her taste. She raised her hand and smiled brightly. Deal. Chu Qingyan raised her hand and bumped it. It's a deal. Hua Ling, who was guarding the medical center, almost tripped and fell. My little ancestor, you're so easily promising the medical center's expenses for the next 10 years. Aren't you being too hasty? When Master wakes up and sees you squandering like this, he'll have a headache. After handing the box to Chu Qingyan, Cheng Yanluo didn't want to turn around and face the people behind her. She said to Chu Qingyan, I'll go check on your big ice cube's condition. After all, the snake's kiss poison was very potent. If something happened, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. Cheng Yanluo walked away without looking back. Chu Qingyan held the box in her hands and looked at the shocked Ethereal not far away. She sighed and couldn't help but walk up to him. She said with some disappointment, Ethereal, I always thought you were a sensible man. But when I saw you just now, I was really surprised. I feel that Sister Yanluo's temper is really too good. If it were me, I wouldn't be able to resist throwing this box at you. Earlier, she was taking care of the big ice cube in the room. When she passed by after knocking on the leaves, she found out that Yanluo was in a difficult situation looking for that box. She couldn't help but want to help her, but she didn't expect to see this scene here. Ethereal smiled sadly. Young princess consort, I was too anxious. That's why I misunderstood little Yan. No matter what, you've already hurt her. Find a chance to explain yourself. I feel that Sister Yanluo is a very good girl. If you like her, you don't have to hide anymore. Chu Qingyan shook her head and turned to leave. Then she thought of something and said softly, It's not easy for a woman to support a medical hall. I heard from the young disciples that Divine Physician Luo has been introducing outstanding men to Sister Yanluo. He wanted to help her support her sect, but she rejected all of them. Think about it. Why would a woman in the prime of her life stubbornly stay in a place and refuse to accept other men? You failed to live up to her expectations when you realize it too late. She didn't see Ethereal's body stiffen for a moment. She left after saying that. Why did she suddenly have such a feeling? It was because she thought of a cousin of hers. Back then, she had waited for a man for 10 years. But that man thought that she was already married and had children in another city. It wasn't until later that the two met, and the truth was revealed. The man cried bitterly while her cousin turned and left. In the end, she floated across the sea and left that sad place. She would never forget her cousin's eyes that were red from crying. They were filled with despair and sorrow. 10 years of waiting had turned into a heart-wrenching pain. Hence, she didn't want to see the tragedy repeat itself. Chu Qingyan carried the box back to her room. She saw Qingyan Luo standing by the window in a daze. She thought that no matter how strong a woman was, she would still be weak and helpless in the face of love. Qingyan Luo heard a noise and turned to look at the door. "Little sister Qingyan, you're back." Before she could finish speaking, she saw another figure enter. "What are you doing here?" she asked coldly. Ethereal looked at her, his eyes filled with self-reproach. "Little Yan, I shouldn't have misunderstood you. I apologize." Chu Qingyan smiled faintly when she heard this. It seemed like her words had been effective. "I don't need an apology from an irrelevant person." Qingyan Luo crossed her arms and looked at him disdainfully. Ethereal knew that she was still angry and wouldn't forgive him for the time being. He smiled helplessly and turned to look at Chu Qingyan. "Young Princess Consort, now that we have the redstone fruit, we're still missing the ice crystal flower and the love grass. This subordinate has heard of the ice crystal flower's whereabouts." Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. "Where is it?" Although she was extremely unhappy, Qingyan Luo was still attracted by his words. Chapter 285. With one hand behind his back, Ethereal recalled the rumors he had heard before and slowly explained. "One year, I traveled to the Jiang Kingdom and heard that the Emperor of the Jiang Kingdom liked to collect rare flowers and herbs. 10 years ago, a minister presented a strange flower to the Emperor on his birthday. This flower was stored in ice. At that time, everyone who saw this flower was very surprised because this flower had no leaves but could bloom on its white branches. It became a legend among the people for a while. However, this flower never appeared again, so everyone forgot about it. The description of this flower by the people present is enough to determine that this flower is the rare ice crystal flower. Is this ice crystal flower still with the Jiang Kingdom's imperial family?" 10 years had passed, and Chu Qingyan was not sure whether this flower still existed. Although she was excited, her mind was still very clear. If the news is accurate, it should still be there because the Emperor of the Jiang Kingdom is obsessed with flowers. If there is no serious illness that is difficult to cure, he will not use this flower easily. I heard that there was once a concubine who took the opportunity to ask for this flower, but she was banished to the cold palace by the Emperor of the Jiang Kingdom. Her crime was that she coveted something that she should not covet, and was insatiably greedy. This involved his master, so he was especially cautious when gathering information. Chu Qingyan's brows relaxed. Knowing the whereabouts of the ice crystal flower is a step forward. Ethereal nodded. "Although I don't know how to get the ice crystal flower, I will think of a way. I think it will be very difficult." Qingyan Luo shook her head. "Since the Emperor of the Jiang Kingdom is obsessed with flowers, how can he give the flower to you? Unless the exchange conditions you offer can satisfy him. But he is already the Emperor of a kingdom. What else does he not have? So don't be too naive." Ethereal knew that Xiaoyan's words were directed at him, but he still fell into deep thought because of these words. Chu Qingyan felt that Yanluo's words were very reasonable. This was the dilemma they were facing. "I think I should discuss this matter with Turin and the others." Cheng Yanluo shrugged. She had no objection. After all, Xiaosu was not her highness. "Sister Yanluo, why don't you join us?" Chu Qingyan asked her to stay. Cheng Yanluo thought for a moment. Although she was unwilling to stay in the same room with that person, if she left just like that, it would seem like she was running away. Therefore, she did not have any objections and stayed. Thus, Chu Qingyan called for an emergency meeting. Everyone was present. Chu Qingyan briefly explained the matter, and then asked for everyone's opinion. Turan pondered for a moment and said, Junlan State is between Jiang State and Sichuan State, which is deep in the basin and surrounded by mountains. It is basically isolated from the outside world. Therefore, our intelligence group is not very familiar with it. Besides, Sichuan doesn't have a deep friendship with it. If we want to ask for this ice crystal flower in the name of the royal family of Sichuan, the success is very small. Why are you thinking so much? If the other party doesn't agree, we can directly sneak into Jiang State's imperial palace and get the ice crystal flower. Let's solve this urgent problem first. Huo Ling felt that this matter could not be delayed any longer and couldn't help but interject. Turan shook his head. Don't think too simply. Jiang State's imperial palace is notoriously difficult to break into. There are strange techniques in every corner. I'm afraid that once we enter, we won't be able to return. Then what should we do? We can't just sit here and wait, right? Master still needs medicine to detoxify the poison. Huo Ling scratched his head, somewhat disheartened. Turan's gaze fell on the person in front of him who had been silent all this time. Then young Princess Consort, do you have any ideas? Chu Qingyan replied. I have an idea. Let's go to Jiang State first, and see if we can find a chance to get the ice crystal flower. Now that we don't understand Jiang State's situation, everything is just empty talk. Why don't we go there first and then make plans? Turan and the others felt that the young Princess Consort's words made sense, but Mu Ling was a little worried. Young Princess Consort, Jiang State is a long journey. Even if we gallop at full speed, it will take at least a month. Can Master's poison last until then? Mu Ling's question was also what she was worried about. This was also the reason why she had asked Yen Luo to stay behind for the meeting. She turned to look at the person who had been staying out of the matter. Older sister Yen Luo, how long can you control His Highness poison? Cheng Yen Luo snapped back to her senses after being called out. She saw that everyone was looking at her in unison, and felt a little pressured. She coughed lightly. Originally, with the suppression of my medicinal herbs, I could only control the poison for 7 days. Now that I've found the redstone fruit, it's different. The redstone fruit can be used as medicine first. I should be able to control the poison for 81 days, which is close to 3 months. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. At least they still had time to fight for it. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows, then her expression turned serious. She said to Turan, Huo Ling and the others, these 3 months are very precious. Deducting the time spent on the journey to Jiang State, and the time spent on obtaining the ice crystal flower, less than 3 months isn't enough for us to make a round trip. So while we're looking for the ice crystal flower, we must also find a way to find the whereabouts of the love grass. Otherwise, if we're missing one person, His Highness poison won't be cured. This subordinate understands. Later, I'll send a messenger pigeon to Water Spirit, and have her mobilize all the pigeons to find the whereabouts of the love grass. Turan immediately accepted the order. Huo Ling and the others also nodded to express their understanding. Good. Huo Ling, go and prepare for the departure. Mu Ling, send someone to bring Xining and LVE to the medical hall. Ethereal, observe His Highness' condition at all times and prepare the medicinal herbs needed for the journey. Chu Qingyan methodically instructed. Everyone nodded and accepted the order, then went to carry out their tasks. When everyone in the room left, Chu Qingyan turned around and saw Yen Luo looking at her with a smile that wasn't a smile. She mistakenly thought that there was something on her face. Sister Yen Luo, is there something on my face? There's no flower, but I think I was seeing things before. Cheng Yen Luo retracted her gaze and smiled teasingly. Oh, why do you say that? Chu Qingyan walked in front of her and asked curiously. The first time we met, I thought you were a little girl who didn't know much about the world. The second time we met, I still thought so. Now, I'm afraid I have to overturn this idea. Cheng Yen Luo smiled lightly. So you're not a little sheep, but a little fox. You actually hid so deeply. I was almost fooled by your appearance. No, it should be said that when you tricked me into agreeing to cure the poison, I should have realized it. Sure enough, I'm still too naive. Cheng Yanluo's tone was somewhat regretful. The corners of Chu Qingyan's eyes twitched. She was still called naive. If that was the case, then everyone else was dregs, alright? Sister Yanluo, this is called hiding so deeply. However, she was still a little happy to hear Cheng Yanluo's praise. Cheng Yanluo smiled. You really opened a dye house just to show me some color? Chu Qingyan giggled, then asked, That's right, how are we going to feed His Highness the redstone fruit? As soon as she finished speaking, she saw Cheng Yanluo reveal a malicious expression. Chu Qingyan suddenly had a bad premonition. The redstone fruit isn't for eating, but... Chapter 286. What is it? Cheng Yanluo's faint smile made Chu Qingyan shudder. Why did she look like an old witch who was trying to coax a little girl into eating a poisoned apple? Cheng Yanluo naturally did not know what Chu Qingyan was thinking, but she could guess a thing or two from the look on her face. Cheng Yanluo chuckled. It has other uses. She couldn't tell the little girl that it was only fun to tease her. Chu Qingyan could only express her helplessness at Cheng Yanluo's riddle. She thought that if she fought with Ethereal, even Ethereal wouldn't be her match. She was too cunning. Cheng Yanluo tapped her chin. She wondered if the little girl would have a nosebleed when she found out about the use of the redstone fruit. She was looking forward to it. However, no matter how the redstone fruit was used, it was fine as long as it could prolong the effects of the snake's venom. However, she had a favor to ask of Cheng Yanluo. Sister Yanluo, Qingyan has a favor to ask, but I don't know if you'll agree. Chu Qingyan was hesitant, but she still asked earnestly. Hearing this, Cheng Yanluo smiled knowingly. Do you want me to go with you to the Jiang Kingdom? Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up slightly as she said without hiding anything. Yes, it will take a long time for us to reach the Jiang Kingdom. We will not be able to make it back in time. I hope that you can come with us to the Jiang Kingdom. If anything happens along the way, My Highness will have an additional layer of protection. I won't force you, but I sincerely hope that Sister Yanluo can be a good person to the end. Qingyan will be grateful to you for the rest of her life. I'll tell you how to detoxify the poison. If you've gathered all the herbs, just follow the instructions. It doesn't matter if I go or not. Cheng Yanluo leaned against the door and smiled. No, it's very important. No one knows if the snake's venom will mutate. As for His Highness's safety, I want to do my best to ensure it. Furthermore, I believe in you. If you can come with me, I will be more at ease. Chu Qingyan winked at her. Don't you have a doctor? His medical skills are not inferior to mine, Cheng Yanluo said without hesitation. Chu Qingyan knew that she was talking about Ethereal. She rolled her eyes and said, How can Ethereal's medical skills be compared to yours? You were the one who detoxified the snake's kiss poison. You don't have to flatter me. I know what he's capable of. Cheng Yanluo's face turned cold at the thought of that person. Good sister, just agree. Chu Qingyan hugged her arm and said coquettishly. Cheng Yanluo patted her head gently. Just when Chu Qingyan thought that she had succeeded, Cheng Yanluo poured a bucket of cold water on her. Little girl, your coquettish and cute tricks only work on His Highness. I won't fall for it. As soon as she finished speaking, she left. Chu Qingyan stood in the distance and rubbed her nose. Sigh Ethereal, I've tried my best to fight for you. Unfortunately, Yanluo won't budge. You're on your own now. She turned around and returned to Xiao Su's side. She habitually held his hand and continued her usual nagging. Although she knew that he had no intention of giving up, she still wanted to talk to him. She felt that if she talked to him more, he might be able to wake up sooner instead of sleeping day after day. Big Ice Cube, I found the redstone fruit, but I'm still missing the ice crystal flower and the love leaf. I don't know where the love leaf is, but I've found the ice crystal flower. It's in the Jiang Kingdom. Although the Jiang Kingdom is far away and I don't know what their situation is like, I won't give up as long as there's a glimmer of hope. There's one more thing. There are so many wolves and tigers in the Imperial Court who want you to die on this trip. In order to prevent any mishaps and bring about a fatal disaster, I acted on my own initiative and concealed our whereabouts. Everything will be decided after you wake up. Chu Qingyan rambled on, and recalled what had happened recently. She told him everything in detail. She had heard people say that people who fell into a coma were actually very lonely. If someone could talk to them, they would feel at ease and it would also help their condition. That was why she persevered. Another reason was that ever since she met Xiao, she had never talked to him for such a long time. Although she was usually the one who chattered nonstop, Xiao would occasionally reply to her. She began to miss the past. She couldn't help but lie on the bedside and whisper, "Big Ice Cube, when will you wake up? I miss you so much." Her voice was affectionate and filled with endless yearning. His motionless eyelashes fluttered inadvertently, like a butterfly that had been standing still for a long time suddenly flapping its wings. But everything happened so quickly that it seemed to be an illusion. In the afternoon, a youth named 11 walked over and said politely, "Miss Chu, my senior sister is looking for you." Chu Qingyan thought that he must be looking for her to explain the medicinal properties of the redstone fruit. She felt uneasy for a moment. She didn't think much of it, and left the room with 11. 11, I see that you're older than little 10. What's your order? She couldn't help but be curious when she saw a 17 or 18-year-old disciple being addressed as 14 this morning. We're arranged according to the time of our apprenticeship. If someone in their 40s or 50s wants to be apprenticed in the future, they'll have to call me senior brother 11, 11 said with a smile. Chu Qingyan shuddered when she imagined a white-haired elder calling a wimpy kid senior brother. That image was too beautiful for her to bear. At this point, Chu Qingyan had already walked to Cheng Yanluo's room. She knocked on the door, and entered only after she heard a response. "Sister Yanluo, I'm here." Take this." As soon as she entered the room, someone stuffed a piece of paper into her hands. Chu Qingyan glanced at Cheng Yanluo, who was writing something. She wanted to ask about it, but seeing how busy she was, she could only lower her head to read what was written on the paper. The medicinal properties of the redstone fruit? After reading 10 lines at a glance, Chu Qingyan understood that the redstone fruit was indeed not to be eaten, but to be used in a medicinal bath. However, she felt that this method of treatment was very normal. She had often seen this method on television, so she really couldn't understand why Cheng Yanluo had looked so cunning before. "Are you done reading?" Cheng Yanluo finished the last stroke and looked at her with interest. Chu Qingyan nodded honestly. She saw that cunning smile again. "Then you can go down and prepare for your highness's medicinal bath." Cheng Yanluo looked at her with a smile. "Me? Aren't you the ones preparing it?" Chu Qingyan raised her hand and pointed at herself in disbelief. "That's right, it's you," Cheng Yanluo said matter-of-factly. Her eyes curved into crescents. "I've done my research in private. Your Highness doesn't like to be touched by others, but he's an exception. I don't want our young disciple to die young. So as a family member of the injured, you have to do it yourself." "What?" Chu Qingyan was stunned. Chapter 287. She must have opened the door in the wrong way for her to hear this news. Chu Qingyan wondered if she should go out and come in again. That way it would be more normal. Unfortunately, before she could act, Cheng Yanluo ruthlessly shattered her fantasy. Her tone was a little ambiguous. "You don't have to be embarrassed. You're just learning to take care of your husband in advance. Anyway, when you're of marriageable age, you're going to marry him, right? Don't worry, I'm just giving you a good opportunity to take advantage of him. It's a waste not to take advantage of it. You have to grasp it well. I have high hopes for you." Chu Qingyan felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Why did these words sound so wrong? It sounded like she was a love-struck fool who couldn't wait to take advantage of a good man's innocence. "All right, then I'll leave the important task of taking 3 medicinal baths a day to you." Cheng Yanluo crossed her arms and continued to smile as she made the final decision. When Chu Qingyan left with the prescription in her hand in grief and indignation, Cheng Yanluo's lips curled into a meaningful smile. She really wanted to see how the cold lord interacted with this cute little girl. She hoped that day would come soon. At this moment, Chu Qingyan didn't know what Cheng Yanluo was thinking. She looked at the prescription in her hand with a conflicted expression. She had never bathed the opposite sex in all her life. Needless to say, Her little brother had never bathed before, let alone 3 medicinal baths a day. She wanted to cry, but had no tears. She was still a virgin, okay? Why did she always have to face these inexplicable problems? When she thought of Cheng Yanluo's teasing just now, she couldn't help but blush. Take care of her husband in advance? She had to marry him when she was of marriageable age. She didn't think so much, okay? The affairs of the world were unpredictable. She just wanted to spend her youth peacefully. But the more she thought about it, the hotter her face became. Chu Qingyan reached out and patted her face. No, she had to find someone to help her. So she went to the wood spirit first. She always felt that the wood spirit was easier to talk to. So the situation went like this. The wood spirit was sharpening a knife. When it saw the young princess, it immediately stood up and bowed. Oh, the wood spirit. Young princess, this subordinate is here. Well, if His Highness wants to delay the onset of the poison, he will need a medicinal bath with the redstone fruit. Can you help His Highness with the medicinal bath? The moment Chu Qingyan's voice fell, Mu Ling looked at her with a fearful expression. Little princess consort, you don't know this, but Master has a habit. He doesn't like other people touching him. Several years ago, when Master was injured and fell into a deep sleep, Hualing accidentally touched Master's arm, and had my hand broken by the unconscious Master. It took me 3 months to recover. This subordinate's hand still has to make small toys for you, so please spare me. Thus, the wood spirit picked up the knife on the ground and ran away. Chu Qingyan wanted to stop him, but it was already too late with his wind-like speed. Although Chu Qingyan had hit a wall with the wood spirit, she wasn't discouraged. She aimed at the second target, the fire spirit. When she explained why she came, Hualing did not even greet her before jumping onto a tree. Then he used his qinggong to fly away. His pitiful wails came from the distance. Young princess consort, please spare this subordinate's hand. This subordinate still has to use the knife to protect Master. Chu Qingyan watched the disappearing figure, and her lips curled. She wasn't afraid. She could find Ethereal. When she found Ethereal, Chu Qingyan was slightly stunned. It looked up at a 45-degree angle with a depressed expression. Was this still the romantic and carefree Ethereal that she knew? Before Chu Qingyan could speak, Ethereal's desolate voice sounded. Young princess consort, this subordinate knows why you came, but this subordinate's mood is very confused and sad right now. I'm afraid I'm not up to the task, so I ask young princess consort to find someone else. With such an absent-minded appearance, she didn't feel assured leaving Big Ice Cube to him. After hesitating for a while, she only had Turin left to ask for help. She found Turin in the yard, who was arranging people. When Chu Qingyan was thinking about what to say, Turin saw her and spoke first. Young princess consort, I heard that you'll be helping Lord take a medicinal bath. Normally, us subordinates can't even get close to Master. Fortunately, you're an exception and he won't reject your approach. I'll have to trouble you. After he finished speaking, Turin gave a slight nod and led his subordinates out the door, leaving Chu Qingyan to wither in the wind. Could she not avoid this calamity? At this time, the death warrant had already arrived. Big Sister Chu, the herbs for the medicinal bath have already been prepared. The wooden tub has also been placed in His Highness' room. You can start now. 11 walked over and smiled as he spoke to her. Chu Qingyan had always thought that this little disciple looked like a little angel when he smiled. Now, she had the illusion that he had sharp teeth in his mouth and evil wings on his back. I understand. Chu Qingyan lowered her head and replied. It was only when she walked into the room that she suddenly perked up. What was this? For the sake of Big Ice Cube's health, she should do it without hesitation. Moreover, she had already hugged and kissed Big Ice Cube. Was she afraid of being completely honest with him? Even though she was clearly thinking this, her heart still felt a little flustered. When she entered the room, the door behind her closed with a bang. She jumped in fright. She subconsciously wanted to open the door, but when she glanced at Big Ice Cube on the bed, her hand involuntarily dropped down. Big Ice Cube's life was at stake. How could she still have the mood to think about such trivial things? She had a mature mentality and avant-garde thinking. Was there a need to be so hesitant? When she asked herself this, Her trembling heart slowly calmed down. She quickly walked in front of the bed and reached out her hand. Then she took it back and scratched her head. What should she do? She estimated the distance between the bed and the wooden tub. It was at least 5-6 steps away. She did not know the great Qiankuan shift, so how could she teleport him into the wooden tub? But Hualing and the others had already escaped. It was impossible for her to call for help, so she could only do it herself. She remembered that the prescription clearly stated that in order for the body to absorb the medicine, she had to take off her clothes. She subconsciously looked at Xiao Su's clothes and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Cuckoo. She was going all out. She trembled as she reached out to touch his belt. The cold and hard belt was just like how he normally treated people. The moment she touched it, Chu Qingyan's fingers trembled slightly. As if he sensed someone approaching, Xiao Su's brows knit. At this time, in order to untie his tightly buckled belt, Chu Qingyan couldn't help leaning over. That familiar fragrance lingered in Xiao Su's nose. His knitted brows slowly relaxed and his tightly clenched fingers relaxed, as if he was relieved. Chu Qingyan did not know that she had just dodged the killing intent of the person below her. She was still struggling with his belt right now. She finally untied his belt with great difficulty. She let out a long sigh of relief before moving on to his outer clothes. Actually, the moment she took off his belt, his clothes had already fallen apart. She could see his exquisite collarbone and Chapter 288. The moment the neckline loosened, the exquisite collarbone entered her eyes, and she suddenly remembered what she had seen on Weibo. In order to prove that one's collarbone was prettier than others, there were coins, lighters, pen covers, and all kinds of other things placed on it. However, if she had coins on hand, she also wanted to try putting them on the big ice cube. Just how much could he take? Not long after this thought appeared, she slapped it away. It's more important to do proper things. When she said this, she choked. When did taking off other people's clothes become proper things? No one would believe it even if she said it. A few black lines appeared on her forehead. And probably not many people would know about this matter. Low-key. She comforted herself as she hung the things in her hands on a shelf on the side. The big ice cube's illness was more important, otherwise the medicine would turn cold, so she had to move quickly. At this time, in the courtyard outside the room, Hualing and Muling were squatting sneakily. Turin was leaning against a tree and Ethereal was standing with his arms crossed. The little princess consort should be starting, right? Hualing's voice was filled with interest. Looking at the time, it's about time. Muling said after counting with her fingers. When the two of them were happily watching, Turin suddenly spoke from the side. You're not doing proper things and you're slacking off here? Moreover, the doors and windows were tightly shut, so they couldn't see anything. Hualing looked at him and said with a sneer, "Didn't you also come to peep with us? Don't be the pot calling the kettle black." Turin choked and didn't say anything else. At this time, Ethereal shook his head and sighed. In the past, it was hard for us to even take a single step closer to Master, but now he's treating the little princess consort differently. I feel like our friendship over the past 10 years can't compare to this 1 year of being together. The wood, fire, and earth spirits deeply agreed. Ever since he had the little princess consort, they no longer existed in Master's eyes. If Chu Qingyan knew what they were thinking, she would definitely reply like this. She would say that without her, they wouldn't exist in the big ice cube's eyes. The wood, earth, fire, and space spirits felt like their knees had been pierced by an arrow. At this time a head came over. How is it? What step are you at? Hualing casually replied. He's probably changing his clothes. No way, I clearly told the little girl not to wear clothes. As soon as he finished speaking, the four of them turned to look at the person who had suddenly appeared. Ethereal could not help but ask. Since when do we need to take off all our clothes in the medicinal bath? Cheng Yanluo could not be bothered to look at him. My rules. The three spirits of wood, fire, and earth suddenly felt that their little princess had been cheated so miserably. No, it was their master. Chu Qingyan, who was in the room, naturally did not know what was happening outside. At this time, she helped Xiao Su to lean against the bed wall, and took off the heavy coat. After taking off her outerwear, she was only left with her underwear. His pure white underwear contrasted with his pale cheeks, making him look even weaker. Her heart ached for him. She had always been strong enough to make her feel at ease, but now she had become so fragile. She closed her eyes and raised her hand to wipe away the tears at the corner of her eyes. Because of his sitting posture, his head was slightly tilted, and his expression was very innocent. Chu Qingyan was a little hesitant to take off his underwear. In the end, she gritted her teeth and in a spurt of energy, she closed her eyes and opened the underwear. Because of his arm, she gently lifted his left hand. After safely passing through, she lifted his right hand. Finally, she took off his shirt. She was about to put down his right arm, but because of gravity, he slid down the bed wall. Chu Qingyan felt his movements and did not care about anything else. She immediately reached out to stop him, and Xiao Su's entire body fell into her chest. Because his head was made of bones, Chu Qingyan felt her chest being heavily hit. She almost cried out, but she bit her lip to stop herself. She had no choice but to open her eyes and reach out to hold his shoulder. The touch of warmth and coldness made her feel dazed. She gathered her thoughts and helped him sit up. She thought that the big ice cube usually looked lean, but she did not expect his body to be so muscular and sexy under his clothes. It was the most popular saying nowadays. He looked lean with clothes on, but muscular without clothes. Chu Qingyan swallowed her saliva. This was simply torture for her body and mind. Although she had never experienced love, her roommates in the dormitory kept talking about 8-pack abs, the golden ratio of the belly button, and the ratio of the upper body to the upper body was 5 to 8. At this moment, these were the words that were hovering in her mind. She swallowed her saliva again. She felt that the big ice cube fit all of these descriptions. If her unscrupulous roommates saw this scene, they would probably turn into wolves and pounce on him. Fortunately, she had good self-control. She patted her chest and looked away. Then, she retracted her gaze and looked straight ahead. Her mission was to help Big Ice Cube take a medicinal bath, not to admire beautiful men. After cheering him on, she was conflicted again. How should she take off the Big Ice Cube's pants? His upper body was fine, but she really did not have the courage to take off his lower body. However, Sister Yenluo had said that in order to maximize the medicinal bath's effect, she had to do this. Chu Qingyan stretched out her hands for a long time before slowly taking off his pants. Cough cough. There was still a pair of underwear underneath. She would just ignore it for now. She had to put him in the wooden tub first. Chu Qingyan gestured with her hands. She lifted one of his arms and fixed it on her shoulder. Then she said, "Big Ice Cube, be careful. I'm going to help you up." She did not intend to hear his reply. He was already unconscious, so he probably did not know anything. Hence, she got ready to stand up. However, when she exerted her strength, she fell heavily on the bed. Fortunately, she bumped her head against his body. It was really painful. If I wasn't a 10-year-old, I wouldn't have a problem lifting the big ice cube up, right? She whimpered. Indeed, there was a huge difference in strength between a man and a woman. However, she did not dare to delay. Even if she went out to seek help, no one would care about her. She regained her composure. Gritting her teeth, she supported his waist with one hand and held his hand with the other. She used all her strength to help him up from the bed. However, she did not dare to think too much at this moment. After she steadied herself, she began to walk towards the wooden tub with difficulty. Every step was very strenuous. Not only did she have to bear all his weight, but she also had to overcome his slipping body at any moment. Although the big ice cube had been unconscious for the past few days, she had only given him a simple wipe. She had not bathed him. However, after so many days, there was no smell on him at all. He still smelled so good. Oh, he smelled so good. Smelled so good? Something was flowing out of her nose. Why was it so itchy? Chu Qingyan lowered her head. A drop of blood fell to the ground and shattered into a flower. Bastard. She was actually having a nosebleed? Why was she having a nosebleed? In an instant she felt dizzy. Sigh. It must be because she had not rested well recently. That was why she was feeling so dizzy. This untimely nosebleed would cause misunderstandings, okay? She had been innocent all her life. Chapter 289. Her eyes seemed to be playing tricks on her. She shook her head. Her head felt heavy. She didn't know why, but she felt that her head was burning. Her head was heavy, and she really wanted to sleep. If she had a pillow, she would probably fall asleep. Could it be that she had this strange feeling because she saw Big Ice Cube's body? That couldn't be right. However, she couldn't care so much at this moment. The most important thing was to help Big Ice Cube inside. Because she had to support Xiaosu's entire body, she couldn't look down. She didn't see the water that the child had spilled on the ground when he brought it in. By the time she stepped on it, it was too late to realize that something was wrong. Because her foot had already slipped, she lost her balance and fell in Xiaosu's direction. She widened her eyes in fright. No, Big Ice Cube was injured, and the bones of people in winter were weaker than in other seasons. If he fell like this, it would be one disaster after another for Big Ice Cube, adding injuries on top of injuries. In the blink of an eye, she used all her strength to adjust their positions. Suddenly, she recalled the time when she had blocked the arrow for him to save Big Ice Cube, but he had leaned over her at the last moment. Tears welled up in her eyes. She didn't expect that the unfinished business back then would be fulfilled now. At that time, she wondered if Big Ice Cube would have a chance to avoid it if she hadn't jumped over. But in the end, Ethereal told herself that Big Ice Cube couldn't avoid it. At that time, Big Ice Cube couldn't split himself, and didn't have any strength left. However, he suddenly exploded with power and pulled her down. It was enough to see that he treated her well, and couldn't bear to see her get hurt. Back then, he said that he wouldn't let her get hurt again, and he really kept his promise. He was such a person who had a sense of responsibility. When she fell heavily on the ground, she didn't immediately feel any pain. She only felt that her heart was about to jump out of her body. What followed was a moment of dizziness, and Big Ice Cube's body fell directly on top of her. In order to avoid touching his wound in a hurry, she only dared to reach out and grab his arm. It was with this pull that Xiaosu's face coincidentally touched hers. Her hand froze in midair, and the scene of his face gradually enlarging seemed to be repeating endlessly in front of her eyes. His lips. This was too much of a coincidence. In an instant he quivered. Chu Qingyan subconsciously turned her head, and his breath brushed past her cheek. As if she had been injected with chicken blood, she crawled up with a whoosh sound. Her face was so red that it could drip blood, but she didn't dare to look at him. She quickly propped him up. She didn't know where the strength came from, but in a daze, she propped him up and placed him into the wooden tub. When she saw him sitting quietly in the bucket, Chu Qingyan opened her palm. She still couldn't believe that she could do such an incredible thing. If it wasn't for today, she wouldn't have known that she had the potential to become Popeye. As expected, potential needed to be stimulated. However, that kiss just now, was it like a lucky kiss? Chu Qingyan shook her head. No, her mind was in a mess. What was she thinking? Suddenly, she began to feel dizzy again. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but lean on the wooden tub to wake herself up. She didn't know what was going on today, but her body kept protesting. Could it be that she was sick? Perhaps it was because she didn't have much rest recently. Chu Qingyan didn't think too much about it. She touched the few buckets of hot water on the ground. And the water was still very hot. There shouldn't be any problems. Although Chu Qingyan felt that she had tossed around for a long time and wasted a lot of time. In fact, only a cup of tea's worth of time had passed. Because she was anxious and nervous, she felt that time was very long. Chu Qingyan didn't hesitate. She lifted the bucket and poured the water into the wooden tub. There were 3 or 4 buckets of hot water in the room. She poured one bucket after another, not daring to stop for fear that the water would turn cold. The herbs that she had poured at the bottom of the bucket immediately floated up with the water. When it almost reached Xiaosu's chest, she stopped. Because there was an arrow wound on Big Ice Cube's chest that hadn't formed a scab yet, and couldn't come into contact with water, Chu Qingyan carefully avoided the gauze. But at this time, Chu Qingyan saw the black hair that poured over Xiaosu's shoulders. She suddenly patted her head, and remembered that she had neglected it. She immediately turned her head to look for a hairpin to tie up his hair. But after looking for a long time, she couldn't find it. Finally, her eyes lit up and she pulled out the jade hairpin on her head. Immediately, 3,000 strands of black hair fell down, and the handsome little boy immediately returned to his elegant young girl appearance. But she didn't care about her hair. She walked behind Xiao Su and pushed his black hair to the back of his head. A man's hair wasn't as smooth as a woman's and was a little hard, but it still felt good to the touch. In the past, when they slept together, she had pulled out his hair to play with it. This was the first time she had done it for him. Although she hadn't done anyone else's hair before, she had done her best this time. She took a step back and admired it. Although it was a little crooked and strange, she couldn't resist Big Ice Cube's good temperament. No matter how bad the hairstyle was, it still looked beautiful on his head. After admiring it, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but praise her skills. She put on a serious face and didn't lie at all. After his hair was pulled up, his strong shoulders were exposed. Chu Qingyan raised her hand and poked his face with jealousy. She said softly, "Your skin is so good. As a woman, I'm not convinced." But no matter how she tossed and turned, the person sitting peacefully in the water didn't react at all. Chu Qingyan withdrew her hand. She remembered Yan Luo's words. After a quarter of an hour in the water, the redstone fruit could be cut open, and the fruit inside could be pulled into the water. She immediately turned around to look for a dagger, and took the redstone fruit from the tray. When she turned around, a hazy smoke rose. It seemed like she was admiring it through the thin smoke and faint fog. No. She had already sprayed it once. She coughed softly. This really wasn't a very good experience, ah. Fortunately, no one noticed. But when she walked back to the wooden tub, she suddenly remembered that Big Ice Cube's underwear hadn't been taken off yet. It seemed that soaking in the water didn't affect the absorption of the herbs. But at that time, Yan Luo had repeatedly reminded her not to forget this part. She scratched her head. Should she take it off? But why did she feel that Yan Luo's expression at that time was a little, wretched? No, she must have seen wrongly. Yan Luo was a straightforward person. She wouldn't lie to her about this kind of thing. Forget it. She would rather kill 3,000 innocents than let one go. Chu Qingyan put down the dagger and redstone fruit in her hand, and rolled up her sleeves to prevent them from getting wet. At this time, the herbs were floating on the water. There were flowers and leaves. In short, they were densely packed and covered the bottom of the water, but she could still vaguely see the white underwear underneath. Chapter 290. Before her hand was about to enter the water, she looked at the person in front of her worriedly. Then she pretended to be relaxed as she said, "Big Ice Cube, everything is according to authority. Cough cough, I believe that you won't mind. Also, I guarantee that my eyes will be closed the entire time. I won't see anything that I shouldn't see. Cough cough, so I'm going to start." Chu Qingyan tried to sound him out. Seeing that the person in the water didn't react at all, she let out a sigh of relief. Then she pulled up the sleeve that had slipped down her arm again, and reached into the water. When she entered the water, she created a small splash. At first, the medicinal herbs scattered with the ripples, but soon, they were attracted by her movements and gathered around her arm. She felt itchy on her arm, but she didn't dare to scratch it. In her hazy state, she felt his body shrink back. Chu Qingyan hesitantly raised her head to look at him, but his eyes were still tightly shut, so she continued. After finding the belt with great difficulty, Chu Qingyan was delighted. She found the knot and pulled it slightly. However, once she was happy, tragedy followed. She accidentally turned the slip knot into a dead knot. Then it was another fierce struggle. When she finally untied it, her forehead was already covered in sweat. She swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and used the buoyancy of the water to complete the last step. This action seemed to be more tiring than holding 20 caddies of water and squatting for 4 hours in a horse stance. Until she held his pants in her hand, Chu Qingyan still couldn't believe that she had completed such a difficult action. Her potential was limitless, but she felt that it was better not to do this a second time. However, Chu Qingyan forgot that what was taken off had to be returned. Many years later, a certain man was lying on the couch, looking at the person beneath him. He smiled and replied, "This prince remembers that you were the one who took off my clothes during the medicinal bath. I should repay you for saving my life. Tell me, where should this prince start from? Don't worry, this prince is very democratic. Moreover, she forgot that what was taken off had to be put back on sooner or later. As she raised her arm, those herbs filled the hole again, densely covering the entire surface of the water. Chu Qingyan casually wiped the sweat off her face, then continued what she hadn't done. She carefully cut open the red stone fruit, and realized that there were small, sparkling and translucent grains inside. They were very small and cute. Admiring them was one thing, but Chu Qingyan quickly broke them into the water. Following that, the red stone fruit was added, and the water quickly turned red. Chu Qingyan's lips. The red color that spread out on the water, it made her think of tomato and egg drop soup. Chengyan had told her that she could change the water once the red color entered her body and gradually lightened. However, she couldn't guarantee how long it would take to absorb the red color, as it depended on the person's physique. Therefore, her current task was to keep an eye on Aqua Rose. Once the red color disappeared, it was time to change the water and add medicine. Chew to the water, to the water, to look to the point, to the water, to the water, to of the water. But of a person, to the of the water, to the of the water. Even the mask couldn't hide his exquisite features. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but sigh softly. Big Ice Cube, Sister Yanluo said that it's best to take off your mask when you're soaking in the medicine. But I think it's okay if you don't take it off. She smiled slightly. You're wearing a mask because you don't want anyone to see your face. So how can I take advantage of you when you're unconscious? Do you think that I'm becoming more sensible and loving? If you wake up, you have to help me teach Huoling and the others a lesson. When I need their help, they run away like a wisp of smoke. She complained. However, no matter what she said, the person opposite her didn't respond. Chu Qingyan frowned, but soon relaxed. Sister Yanluo said that after you've absorbed the red stone fruit, you'll slowly regain consciousness. That's great. Just as she shifted into a more comfortable position, and was about to continue chatting, she inadvertently noticed that the water in the wooden tub had slowly turned from a deep red to a light red. Now it was approaching the same color as before. She had thought that the absorption process would take at least 2 hours, but it didn't even take half an hour. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but stand up. She had to inform 11 to bring in some hot water. As soon as she opened the door, Chu Qingyan clearly sensed that a few gazes had suddenly disappeared. She looked around suspiciously, but didn't find anything suspicious. She put aside her thoughts and turned to little 10 and 11, who were walking over quickly. The first medicinal bath is done. We can proceed with the second one. Okay. Although the two of them were surprised by the speed at which Xiao Su had absorbed the red stone fruit, they immediately retreated to prepare the hot water. It had to be said that the efficiency of the medical hall was very high. Before long, 3 buckets of hot water were brought in. That little 10-11, I'll have to trouble you dash. Chu Qingyan had just finished speaking when the two of them put down the buckets and swiftly left, closing the door on their way out. Help me lift His Highness out of the tub. The last words were broken on her lips. Chu Qingyan's head was full of black lines. Was she that scary? Oh no, was Her Highness that scary? Forget it, it was better to rely on herself than on others. Chu Qingyan walked to the side of the wooden tub, but she was somewhat helpless. She couldn't help but walk around the wooden tub. It wasn't easy to lift him up, and the water had to be changed. This problem was very difficult to solve. After thinking for a long time, she suddenly thought of a good idea. In ancient times, there was Sima Guang who smashed a vat to save his good friend. Now, there was Chu Qingyan who smashed a bucket to save the King of England. First, she closed her eyes and scooped up all the herbs floating on top of the wooden tub. After secretly opening one of her eyes to make sure that it was clean, she took out her dagger. This was a treasure that could cut iron as if it was mud, and this insignificant wooden tub was nothing to it. She gestured at the location and fiercely stabbed it, piercing through the wooden tub. The water immediately seeped out. Then, like peeling a fruit, she drew a circle and pulled it out. The chestnut-sized hole was completed. Soon, the water rushed out of the hole. In the blink of an eye, there was nothing left. Chu Qingyan cut a piece of cloth and wrapped it around the dugout piece of wood. Then she stuffed the cloth into the hole to make sure that it wouldn't fall out. Only then did she lift the bucket of hot water by her feet and pour it into the wooden tub. After filling the tub to the brim, she also scattered all the herbs in the basket into the water. Then she broke a third of the red stone fruit into the tub. Yen Luo said that the absorption speed would be slower each time, so the second time did take a little longer than the first time. But in fact it wasn't that long. She pulled out the wooden plug, continued to fill the tub, and continued to pour water. The 3 medicinal baths were finished in 4 hours. Chu Qingyan felt that she was about to cry from exhaustion. But she suddenly remembered something. The big ice cube was completely naked at this time. How was she going to move him back to the bed? Looking up at the unconscious person sitting quietly in the water, Chu Qingyan had the urge to bang her head against the wall for the first time. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.